Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 28th, 2023 regular meeting of the Everett Public School Board of Directors. I shall now call this meeting to order. Before we get started with proceedings of our meeting, I have a statement that I would like to read. We reach out to the students, families, and staff at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee. 3 students and 3 adult staff members were killed, as was the shooter. Many families are grieving and mourning right now because of this senseless, horrific act. The community and our nation now will be and continues to be forever changed because of violence from guns. My hope is that all families affected by these senseless acts of violence, be it from guns, be it from whatever avenue, individuals who have difficulties that they just can't overcome. My hope is that they'll recover from the hurt and pain caused from these senseless acts. Please take a moment with me in remembrance of them who have gone on. Thank you very much. It's quite sad that our hopes and our prayers can't stop this violence. And I would hope that students here and students who will be graduating from our schools soon and will be able to vote will be able to solve this problem that apparently our generation has yet to be able to solve. I'm sorry to put this burden in your hands, but I see such wonderful students out there who have so much to offer our world. And I'm hoping that you can take up this mantle and solve this problem. Thank you. We'll now move to our next item, which is our land acknowledgement, and Student Representative Benticali will present the land acknowledgement this evening.
We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community.
Thank you very much, Student Rep. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Lesane?
Present.
Vice President Mitchell?
Present.
Director Herman?
Present.
Director Nichols?
Present.
Director Mason?
Present.
Student Representative Colley?
Present.
Student Representative Gilbertson?
Present.
Thank you. We'll now move to section 5.0, which is the adoption of the agenda. That's our first item of business, is the adoption of the agenda. And I'm going to ask Dr. Saltzman, would you please introduce this evening's agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: a segment for recognitions, the superintendent's report, segment for board comments, segment for public comments, segment for routine business, segment for strategic progress monitoring, segment for information discussion, segment for new business, and a segment for upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes were made to the agenda. Item 7.01, the superintendent's report. The presentation was updated and added. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. Is there a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Director Mitchell, and seconded by Director Herman to approve and adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The agenda for this evening has been adopted. We'll now move to section 6.0, which is my favorite, and that is recognitions. And we have several presenters this evening for the recognition section, and they are Kaylani Tabanian, Kathy Woods, Larry Fleckenstein, and Peter Meisner. So, first,
Yeah, hi everyone, good evening. I'm so honored. My name's Caroline Tabayan. I work in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, but I'm honored to just welcome our students and families that are present today. We have a huge crowd as we recognize their participation in the Snohomish County NAACP Prodigies of Peace Essay Contest. Prior to this, my presentation, the students will be receiving a signed certificate by Dr. Saltzman himself and Everett's Board of Directors, who you see in front of you. And after, you'll be recognized by your regional superintendents, Kathy Woods, Larry Fleckenstein, and Pete Meisner. And after, please stay, because we're going to take a group photo, and we're so excited to have you guys here tonight.
We are so excited to recognize our wonderful students tonight. Our first Prodigies of Peace Award goes to Riley Waldman. Riley, will you come on up, please? Riley is a 5th grade student. Yes, thank you. Riley is a 5th grade student at Lowell Elementary, and Riley is a 3rd place art winner. So Riley, the certificate is for you. And we're gonna hang out right up here as all the other folks come up, and we'll have a photo. All right, next up is Dr. Kathy Woods.
Thank you. It's an honor to recognize the Prodigies of Peace winners from Region 2, starting with, and you can do the same thing, just come on up when I call your name. Amreen Carr from Penny Creek Elementary. Amreen is a 4th grade student at Penny Creek. And won an honorable mention for her art. Araf Aurora, also from Penny Creek. Araf is also a 4th grade student at Penny Creek and won 1st place in the essay division. Renesmee Marsan from View Ridge Elementary. Esme, as I said, is a 4th grade student from View Ridge Elementary School and won honorable mention for art. Samantha Karp, also from View Ridge. Samantha, also in 4th grade, was a 3rd place essay winner. And apparently a good friend of Esme's. And finally, from Region 2, Sterling Savigny from Everett Virtual Academy. Sterling is in 7th grade at EVA and took 1st place in the art division. So congratulations, and now I'd like to introduce Mr. Larry Fleckenstein.
Well, good evening, and I'm excited to share with you our award winners from Region 3. To start off with, may I please have Nikhil Donna Lakota? Well, Nikhil is a fourth grader at Cedarwood Elementary School and is an honorable mention winner in art and a second place essay winner. Next, I'd like to present Kyron Rajan. Kyron is a first grader at Tambark Elementary School and is a first place winner in art and has one of the coolest sweaters I've ever seen on Love Unicorns. Next, I would like to recognize Macy Yu. Macy is a fifth grader at Woodside Elementary School and is an honorable mention winner in art. Next, I'd like to present Adira Chukala. Adira is a second grader at Forest View Elementary School and is a second place winner in art. And is on Zoom, so hello. Lillian Arnett is our next recognee. Lillian? Lillian's a second grader at Forest View Elementary School and is a third place winner in art. May I have Arvi Goyal come on up to the podium? Arvi is a second grader at Forest View Elementary School and is a second place winner in art. Next, I'd like to recognize Suri Velupala. Suri is a fourth grader at Forest View Elementary School and a third place winner in art. Next, I would like to recognize Avali Richter. Avali is a fifth grader at Forest View Elementary School and is second place essay winner. Next, I'd like to recognize Yafi Taher. Yafi is a fifth grader at Forest View Elementary and is second place winner in the essay competition. Next, I'd like to recognize Princeton McKindy. Princeton is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and was a second place winner in art. Next, may I have Mackenzie Thayer. Mackenzie is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary and an honorable mention winner in art. Sophia Brower. Sophia is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and an honorable mention winner in art. Next, may I have Osman Nihi? Osman? Osman's a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and an honorable mention winner in art. May I have Rua Lee? Rua? Okay. Rua is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary and an honorable mention winner in art. Alyssa Fisk. Alyssa is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary and was an honorable mention winner in art. Ellie Gunlock. Ellie is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary and was an honorable mention winner in the art category. Next, may I have Ivory Collier. Ivory is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary and a first place essay winner. Maisie Kim. Maisie is also a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and was a second place essay winner. Layla Ishiguro. Layla is a third grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and was a third place essay winner as well. Next, may I invite Dia Vindelin? Pardon me. Dia, I'm gonna try to do better on that one, okay? Yeah. Vadivelin. Is that correct? I apologize. Yeah. But this fantastic individual is a fifth grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and is a first place essay winner. Congratulations. Next, may I have Annabelle Lai? Annabelle is a fifth grader at Mill Creek Elementary School and was a third place essay winner. May I have Vivan Raj? Vivan? All right. Vijan is a sixth grader at Gateway Middle School and is an honorable mention in the art category. Next, may I have Sahasra Kalvakunta? Sahasra is a seventh grader at Gateway Middle School and is a third place essay winner. And then finally for Region 3, Joseph Pierce. Joseph is a 12th grader at Jackson High School and a first place winner in art. Congratulations,
And
Region 3.
Larry, you had one young man come in towards the end in the yellow sweatshirt back there. I don't know if he's one of the students.
Yeah. Yep. So if anybody's late. From Cedarwood. Okay. Nikhil?
Is it
Nikhil?
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on up. Welcome, Nikhil. Nikhil is a fourth grader at Cedarwood Elementary School and is an honorable mention winner in art and a second place essay winner. Congratulations.
Okay, now we're going to take a picture. We want to be able to have the board with you. So what we're going to do is scoot back along the little curve there. So just everybody scoot back, you guys scoot in, the board's going to stand up. And once I get them set, parents, you can come take
Tall
pictures too.
boy.
And you want to stand in
Tall,
the back?
bunch, how about like between these two young ladies?
Yes, so that
That way
way
you're
we can
between
see
us.
their faces.
Yeah.
You 3 step forward.
And does that work? Can you see around him, or do you want to come over this way?
Yeah,
Why don't
that's
you come over this way?
Yeah, depends on where she's.
You come this way.
They can see us.
Okay, let me see if I can get you all.
And all the other parents in the background.
Okay. Oh. Can I have one? There? Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Smile good. Now everybody stay there so your parents can come get a picture, okay?
Yeah, don't move.
All right. Let's go for pictures.
Nope, almost done.
Almost.
We got proud family out there.
Okay, I think that's it.
Congratulations, everyone. Congratulations.
Or they don't have to stay, can we release them?
That's, we don't tell them they can always leave.
But I don't know if they know they can leave.
Your parents, you are more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting if you would like. So thank you so much, students, and thank you, parents, for being present in your students' accomplishments. Fantastic. Thank you.
See, they're very compliant. You gave them permission, they went.
We shall now move to section 7.0, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. First of all, again, my condolences to the community of Nashville, Tennessee. All our prayers go out to that community tonight. Again, congratulations to those great youngsters, great artists, great writers, and thank you to the parents and teachers for all the great work they've done with their students. Just want to start off by saying last week we had Educational Professional Support Week, and our cabinet members visited schools and shadowed one of our incredible support professionals. It's always amazing to see the firsthand how this team supports students each day. Every group was amazing, and kudos to especially the cafeteria where I worked at Hawthorne, and I didn't realize that orange chicken is the most popular lunch in the district on Wednesdays by staff and students, so thank you for that. Springtime, do you imagine now and realize now it's springtime, beautiful weather and everything, but springtime means many plays and concerts that are happening in our schools, and just really good activities happening. Thank you for supporting our students as they shine with their talents and many talents that our students have. Snohomish County Basketball Officials Association selected Everett High School girls basketball coach, Mr. Darrell McNeil, as their coach of the year. And Silas Williams from Jackson High School is the boys player of the year. Congratulations to those two individuals who are representing our district with great pride and great honor. Family information nights. Our 5th and 8th grade students and their families are preparing now to transition into the next level of education. Our schools have been doing an amazing job hosting transition meetings with students and information nights for families. It can be exciting and yet sometimes a little bit anxious time for our students. So this is really good as we ease the concerns and the transitions. And again, seeing it firsthand, it's been really good, really good. There's a lot of learning happening in our schools and a lot of fun as well. Spirit days, principals doing activities, bus drivers dressing up, March Madness, Principal of the Day, and more. And I'm grateful for the wonderful relationships that are happening in their buildings. Next week is spring break, and all schools will be closed. Great time to recharge, enjoy your families and friends, and to recharge those batteries. And to our students out there, please be safe during this week off, okay? Be safe and continue doing the right thing, and hopefully you get to enjoy a great break. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salsa. We'll now move to section 8.0, which is our board comments. This is the opportunity for board members and students rep to be able to provide comments about their work in the district. So with that being said, let's start at the far end over there with our students rep. Ms. Gilbertson.
I don't have a bunch to talk about this week, but I'm excited for spring break coming up. And I was able on Wednesday to take the SAT as a junior, and I think it went fairly well, though I did hear a few things about a 15-minute break over 4 hours of work. Yeah, but overall, it's been good. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Rep. Colley.
Hi. School has been good as well. There's not much that has happened. We had prom last week, which was really nice. And we also had SAT testing at our school last week, which I didn't take, obviously, but I think it went good for all the juniors. And we also had a Students of Color conference at EVCC, and that was really good. And it's been a great school year, and it is coming close to the end. So hopefully everyone just sticks out until the end. I know a lot of my friends are getting senioritis. So,
not you.
no, not yet. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Mason.
Thanks. Well, on a happy note, I had the opportunity to go to the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee at Everett High School. And what an amazing production that was, or is. It was just an incredible night. Just walked away with big grin on my face. It was just so fun to see the students, their talent. Miss Coyley just does such an excellent job of pulling those productions together there. And on a more serious note, I just want to mention that tonight, the personnel report contains some positions that are a result of our budget deficit this year, or next year, I should say. And in my almost 10 years on the school board, I have never had to approve a report like that. And I just want to note that is not something that I think any of us sitting up here take lightly, and probably something we don't want to do, but it is our responsibility to balance the budget for next year. And this is an unfortunate piece of it. So I just wanted to note that it's a bit unusual tonight and not in a happy way.
Director Nichols.
I also don't have much to report. I know a lot of elementary schools are going through the teacher conferences right now this week in preparation for spring break, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to the teachers and all the extra work that they do to make sure our students at those levels are learning and getting the most out of their education and involving parents.
Director Herman.
First off, I just want to say a big thank you to the Special Education PTSA for their run, walk, and roll event at the Everett Memorial Stadium earlier this month, and the support of Dr. Clevenger in that event and their work. It was just wonderful to see parent leaders and families, students, staff from all the different schools, and I think my favorite part were the mascot races. I love seeing mascots from all of our schools running across the field, competing against these little kids, and it was just such a wonderful day. For the legislative update, we are now less than 4 weeks away from the scheduled end of the legislative session, and a couple of bill updates. House Bill 1658, authorizing high school students to earn elective credit for paid work experience, has passed out of the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Exec Committee and is now in the Rules Committee. Senate Bill 5048, eliminating college and high school fees, was passed out of House Executive Committee and is now in Appropriations. House Bill 1238, providing free school meals for all. Remember, this was amended down to K4 only, and with a certain percentage who are already identified for the federal free meal program. So they're still calling it free meals for all, but it's been scaled back. And this updated version, amended version, is being heard in Senate Ways and Means Committee this afternoon. It was heard at 4. And then another big one for us, House Bill 1550, transition to kindergarten, which I think we've all hearing about, and we've been following closely. Stryker was introduced last week. A thank you to Director Ann Arnold for providing testimony on that bill. And then a new amendment to that Stryker was heard and passed at yesterday's Senate committee hearing. And so at this time, this new version of the bill is in the Senate Ways and Means. I believe it's scheduled for a hearing this Friday. For us in Everett, this is an improvement from where the bill started at the beginning of the session on the House side. So that's relatively good news. But really at this point, all eyes have turned towards budget proposals. And the revenue forecast that came out last week, I think you've all read, compared to November, shows a slightly higher state revenue in the short term, this current biennium, but projections of growth over the next 2 biennial budget cycles have been lowered. So those numbers are now sort of out there. Budget proposals are being introduced, and later in our meeting tonight, we will be hearing a budget update from Andy Tress that discusses some of these latest legislative implications for our Everett budget, including 1436 and 5311, which were the big comprehensive special ed bills that we've really been following all session long, all K-12 has advocates. So I'll leave it there and look forward to tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Herman. Director Mitchell.
Yes, I just have 2 quick things. One, last Tuesday, we had a special board meeting about sort of social emotional work and, how all the great work we're doing in the district. And Board President Lassane asked about our computer security. Well, those of you who may not or may have the Herald, the very next day, Brian Beckley was on the front page speaking about our internet security, which I know that was not a plant discussion. But then what shocked me was a couple days later, Shoreline Community College was hacked. So I just want to recognize Brian Beckley and our entire IT team, all the staff that do watch our internet safety, because it does take all of us, not clicking on links, not accepting things, but just great recognition, I think, for Brian and his team. So just want to call that out. On a personal note, but it is for this community, I did my civic duty this past 2 days by doing jury duty. I did learn a lot. I waited a lot, but 65 of us showed up. A few got released because of work or other things. Sat for a day today speaking with a judge and attorneys, what's called voir dire. But luckily I was number 55. I've been known as 55 for the past 2 days. I have no name when you're in the court, you're just a number, literally. And but I had no chance of getting on that jury. But it was a really great experience. And I know that I believe some of our students will sometimes, for some classes, go up and sit in jury in the courtrooms. All of us were sort of like, if we didn't have to work tomorrow, we would be up there tomorrow just to see what we're missing out on. But I highly recommend it. And it's I vote. I now have done jury duty. I pay my taxes. I serve on this board. It's a great thing to be part of this community. I met a lot of really great, thoughtful people today and yesterday. So I whatever is going to happen for this person, which I won't say anything for his protection, I think he's got to, it's good civic duty that we do. So thank you
very much, Director Mitchell. I would also like to say thank you to and congratulations to all of the students that we've just passed out certificates for. What a great accomplishment to be involved in writing essays, doing artwork for Prodigies of Peace. And so thank you. Again, I won't say it again, but I look forward to our future students to continue the movement of solving some of the problems that we have in our world today. My second item is going to be an echo of what Director Mason just spent. Our greatest asset that we have as a school district to support our students is our personnel. And in my time on the board, I've never, ever been in a position in which we've had so many individuals listed as a reduction force. And I would hope in the future we never get ourselves in this situation. We can't ever predict something like this because the legislator is what gives us the funding that we need in order to support our students. But this is one of the things that we have to do to ensure that our district stays strong financially and moves forward. But again, I'm reaching out to all of our administrators as we go forward with ensuring that our greatest asset is our personnel are treated fairly and with respect and dignity, and that where we can, we keep them on board because they provide so much support and resources that our students need. With that being said, we shall move to section 9.0, which is public comments. The board specifically sets aside this time to hear from our constituents. We value public input and we want to hear and understand the perspective that they bring to the table. We have one person coming forward for public comment, and that would be Ms. Shanti Johnson from Jackson High School. And if you would please step up to the podium, you'll see 3 blips on the podium. You have 3 minutes, and the first blip will be a green light that will indicate that your time begun and you still have 3 minutes. when you see the yellow light, that will indicate that you have about 30 seconds left. And then when you see the red light, that would mean that indicate that your time is up. So please.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to the board for allowing me to make time for comments. I want to just say I was called for jury duty this week and I didn't get called. I was 119 and the cutoff was what, 118. So I just missed it. But so thank you very much. And I'm glad you had a good experience. I've done it before. It was great. And then I know some of you I saw at the NAACP gala. Woo, woo. Thank you for going. That was such a wonderful event. Yes. And then at the special ed activity, that was really fun. So, so thank you all for participating in these activities that are outside of your regular workday and regular activities that we do. So I have not seen the report yet, but my comment is about the budget. And so as a working person, I participate in this economy. I recognize that the school district needs to address the budget shortfall. And I believe you've heard from another parent a few meetings ago that, you know, when money's tight at home, we have to get rid of some of the essentials as well. As DEI positions across the country fall to lower priority as budgets continue to tighten, what I hear when I see that and hear that is that my family doesn't matter. What I hear and see is that my friends and family and the friends of my loved ones doesn't matter. And it's heartbreaking. It really hurts. And as you deliberate on positions, which it sounds like you've come to some decisions, I ask that you maintain the DEI team as it is. With the increase in the communities of color and LGBTQIA+ families in our community, further engagement around inclusiveness and belonging are going to be needed. Teachers and staff are already finding difficulty in maintaining their tasks and responsibilities in their currently assigned roles. As a mother of Black sons, I have to give myself a pep talk when I engage with teachers and school staff, because I know a lot of the work is still not done around engagement with families of color and LGBTQIA+ families. It gives me a sense that I need to further speak up to find belonging at my school, my kids' schools. I'm a member of the PTA, I'm a parent, I'm a volunteer. I've been in this district since 2013. It's the only district that we have ever been in. And on one hand, I can tell you the people who have made me feel like I belong in this district. That they love my children, are invested in them because they have a sense of responsibility to all children. I'm concerned that their positions are at the top of the list for cuts. With the CRT ban of language, the banning of books, the Great Replacement theory, the rise in race hate crimes and LGBTQIA+ harassment in our country, the work of the team is needed in our schools. With the median DEI department across the country consisting of 3 positions, eliminating even one would disregard the efforts that have been made. With the decision not to fill Aisha's position in the DEI department, they've already experienced a 33% reduction in attrition. As our community experiences changing demographics, having functioning representation at the district level is imperative. The work that Kailani and Joy do is a vital part of the business function of this school district. They are in the community, as you saw with the Prodigies of Peace, participating in building relationships with parent and community leaders. I often hear the question, where are the parents? Where's the community? When referring to meeting the needs of the children in our schools, Joy and Kailani have taken time to meaningfully engage with us.
Thank you so much.
To develop relationships, to help provide support. I just hope that they can be maintained and that my hopes won't be dashed, that they will be eliminated in this budget cut. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. We appreciate you coming forward and speaking to the board this evening.
Thank you.
We'll now move to section 10.0, which is consent agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you provide an introduction to the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts, grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received no questions. The consent agenda is presented as published for board approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saltzman. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is now in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mason and seconded by Director Nichols. Sorry about that. To approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, place it in the new business section of the agenda to be heard? Hearing no requests, we'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. We'll now move to our next section, which is section 11.0, strategic progress monitoring. And I see the presenter is moving forward to the podium. She will provide an iReady diagnostic winter results presentation. We're looking forward to the numbers. Thank you, Dr. Matthews. All right.
All right. Dr. Salzman, President Lassane, Board of Directors, and student representatives, thank you for having me here tonight to share with you the iReady Winter Diagnostic results. Today, I will be reviewing those results in reading and mathematics and also talk to you about the analysis of that data, including fall to winter performance, our district compared to state performance and the national norms, progress toward achieving typical and stretch growth goals, growth and performance as a measure of our growth overall, improvement in placement level as a metric for growth, and then instructional usage. All right, this chart is a chart of the iReady Reading Diagnostic Fall to Winter 2023 data. And this view is a matched cohort, which means that all of the students in this view were tested both in the fall window and in the winter window. And you can see in dark green, the mid to above grade level, light green is early on grade level, 1 grade level below is in yellow, and then the lighter red is 2 grade levels or more, or 2 grade levels below, and dark red is the 3 grade levels or more. And you can see our green increasing from 27 to 39%. It's important to remember that this is halfway through the school year, so there's a lot of learning left for our students. And if we look at this data from an individual student basis, you can see that this really represents a lot of students. So our mid to above grade level increased over 1,400 students. And when we look at the data, it's also important to understand that these students don't necessarily just go from one level to another. Some jump more than one level. In reading, 614 students went from 1 grade level below, sorry, that is in the way. 1 or more grade levels below to mid or above grade level. 1,300 students went from 1 or more grade levels below to early on grade level. And when we look at students by their initial placement, we see quite a lot of improvement. So for example, the students who are 3 or more grade levels below in the fall, 35% of them improved by 1 or more grade levels. 58% of the students who were 2 grade levels below improved by 1 or more grade levels. And 47% of the students who are 1 grade level below improved by 1 or more grade levels. This view is all students in the winter by grade level. And I would note that the kindergarten students are required to take the test in the winter as part of the early literacy assessment. But in the fall, it's optional. So about 300 students took it in the fall this year, and this would represent their entire group of students. So you can see from this view that we have our third grade students with the largest number of students early on grade level or above. Our first grade students have the lowest number. You will not see any students 1 or more grade levels below in kindergarten because there are no grade levels below in kindergarten. When we compare students by program, ethnicity, or race, you will see that multilingual learners and students with disabilities lag their peers. And that is in fact why we have programs like this, so that we can help to raise those students up to grade level standards through interventions. When we look at the ethnicity, our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders and our Hispanic and Latino students are lagging in this area. This is our math I-Ready diagnostic, the matched cohort data from fall to winter. Same color scheme. So you see that our students in mid to above grade level halfway through the year went from 15 to 26. And then we also saw an increase in our early on grade level. And again, that represents about 1,400 students. And of the students who were 1 or more grade levels below, 510 went up to mid or above grade level. 1,556 moved up to early on grade level. Really, once we get them into early on grade level with that kind of a jump, we have great chance of getting them to standard by spring. As with reading, we saw improvements. So 35% of our students who are 3 or more grade levels below improved by at least 1 grade level. 2 grade levels below, 58% of them improved by at least 1 grade level, and 39% of the students who are 1 grade level below improved by at least 1 grade level. This is our performance, K8, and I would just say that kindergarten is optional in math all year. They're only required to do the early literacy. So this represents more along the lines of about 900 students. So our performance in math has been a little bit lower, as we have seen in the SBA. And again, why we have programs like this to help students get to standard. I should point out as well, you're seeing 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is the first year that we've tested all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And this provided really wonderful information at standards-based level for our middle schools as they work with students to get them to standard as well. As with reading, we do see gaps with our multilingual learners, students with disabilities, our Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and our Hispanic and Latino students. And this gap is slightly less for math, but the performance is also slightly less. And so in both cases, of course, these are a concern and something that we are focused on. So this is a look at our performance in comparison to Washington State and then the national norm sample. So for mathematics, our early on grade level and above are at 47% of our students district-wide. And that is above what we see both in Washington State and in the nationally normed sample. The same is true for reading. We have a higher percentage at 58%, but again, outperforming the state and national norms. So Curriculum Associates has a growth and performance model, and it's helpful
to look at both of these metrics, but it's also helpful to look at them together. So in this model, we define growth by the median percentage of typical growth gained. So we look at the amount of the percentage of growth that each student made in the school, and then select that median number. And halfway through the year, a reasonable expectation would be about 50%. For performance, we look at the performance relative to the national norm, and that line that you're seeing there is the 50th percentile. You can see that all of our grade levels are in that high performance, high growth quadrant, which is obviously what we want to see. The highest growth was in grade 7 with a median of 112% of typical growth, and I'm going to show you a little model that'll explain that. But essentially what it means is that 50% of the students in that grade level halfway through the year have already met the typical growth. That'd be 100% of their typical growth and another 12%. So those students, 50% of them have more growth than 112% of their goal. The highest performance was at kindergarten, but with 332 students, very selective. I am giving that award to the 4th grade at 69th percentile. So here are our kindergartners and 1st grade and 2nd, 3rd, higher in the growth there, 4th, 5th, 6th, a little bit of a drop there in their growth, 7th at the height there, and there's 8th grade. This is the same view for mathematics. There's our 50% line, or excuse me, our median percent of typical growth at 50%, and then our 50th percentile line. We have a couple of schools right on that border, but with the exception of grade 6, they all fall in that high growth, high performance quadrant. They are clustered a little bit more. So here's kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade below that line. And you might remember they were a little bit below in reading as well. 7th grade and 8th grade. Highest growth was 8th grade with a median of 78% of typical growth. And then highest performance again was kindergarten, but we're going to give it again to 4th grade. 4th grade wins. All right. So one of the things we look for is an improvement in placement levels as well. So we want students to be growing. Some students are considerably behind in the beginning of the year. They may be 2 or 3 grade levels below, and it's not really reasonable halfway through the year to expect that they'll be at grade level. So we look for things like increases in their placement level between the 3 levels below to 2 to 1, and then early on grade level. So what you're seeing here is the percent of students with an improved relative placement level by their grade level. Math is in blue, reading is in orange. Notice 4th grade there. I don't think I made a box for it, but math is above reading there in 4th grade, which is really great. Students in 4th grade in math, 50% have improved relative placement levels. So our 3rd graders here, 54% of students in reading and 50% in math have improved their placement level. And if we look at this from their initial starting point, which is in many ways more important than grade level, you can see that those students who are 3 or more grade levels below, 2 or more grade levels below, they're having that, the largest percentage of students actually jumping between placement levels, improving their placement level, with 58% in math in both those, the 3 or more grade levels below and the 2 grade levels below. And then for reading, 55% at 3 or more grade levels below. So that's what we want to see. We want to see the students that are farthest behind, meeting those growth goals, improving their placement. This is the same information for ethnicity and program. And you can see there the cluster is generally around that 50% mark. We have on the low end our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders lagging a little bit as they have in the other metrics. All right, so let's talk about typical and stretch growth. This is a bit of a reminder, but I think it'll help you to really understand the data that is coming ahead. So typical growth is the average amount of growth that each grade level and placement level sees. When we look at that millions of data points in this program, the average growth. So where you start matters. We have two students here, Alex and Bianca, and they have different typical growth goals. Bianca is farther behind, Alex is farther behind, and that growth goal is 27 points. That's typically what is seen by students in her grade at her level. Bianca, on the other hand, only has a typical growth goal of 25. Different placement level, we'll assume the same grade level. And it's what we expect students to exceed in a typical year. Okay, so we want everyone to hit 100% of their growth goal, in typical growth goal. The stretch growth goal is a much more ambitious goal, and it's really what is recommended to put students on a path to proficiency. It might take more than 1 year, but if students meet those consistently over time, we do see them get to standard. So for Alex, typical growth would be 27 points. So we would call that 100% of her typical growth if she made a gain from fall to winter of 27 points. If she made 33 points, we would say 120%. Likewise, her stretch growth is 43, so that'd be 100% of stretch growth. If she hit 65, she'd be at 150%, and that's not unusual for students who are working hard and engaged in the program, that they can make those kinds of gains. All right, so I tell you all this because we're going to look at those stretch and typical growth. So this is a look at the median percent of progress toward the growth goals in reading. So you see our 50 mark right here. So this would be a median of 50%. So in grade 3, the median for typical growth in red was 91%. So in grade 3, half the students have already achieved halfway through the year more than 91% of their typical growth goal. And remember, that's what we expect them to do in a year. So we can expect those students to continue to grow. For their stretch growth, their median stretch growth is 54%. So that means that half the students have achieved half, 54%, of their stretch growth already. So we would call that range around 50% to be a reasonably where we want them to be. And this is the median for that whole grade level. You heard me say 112, that's 112 right there. That means that 50% of the students in that class have already earned more than 112% of the typical growth goal that was set for them based on their initial placement in 7th grade. That's very high. As with our percent changing levels, it is helpful also to look at this from where students started. So here are students who are 1, 2, and 3 or more grade levels behind at their initial placement in the fall in reading. And you see that for 3 or more grade levels below, their median's typical percent of typical growth is 96%. And that is what we want to see. We want to see the group the farthest behind making growth as quickly as possible, right? You will see their stretch growth is a little bit less. It's at 38%, 40%. And then as we get to 1 grade level below, it's at 52%. And we do want to see it right around the 50% mark right now. But you have to understand these are 3 or more grade levels below, which means you may have students, say a 5th grader who is scoring into 1st or 2nd grade. They have a long way to go. And 38% to that, for that student is still very good. Here's that same information by ethnicity and race, as well as program. And this is for reading. So we're seeing our median percent progress toward typical growth in that area by ethnicity from 70 to 92 is the range there, with Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders at the lower end. And then you see our students with disabilities and multilingual learners slightly less, but very high, 71 and 75%. And then clustered mostly around that 50% mark for our median progress towards stretch growth. Again, groups that are lagging are Native Hawaiian and our Pacific Islanders, as well as our Hispanic or Latino students. Same information for math. So our typical growth is in the dark blue. In the light blue is median progress toward the stretch growth. And you'll see that this is a little bit more clustered around that 50% mark. And overall, the math scores were a little bit lower. So this is what we would typically see. However, just like with reading, when we look at students who are significantly behind, 2 or 3 grade levels behind, notice that we have very high median percent toward that typical growth at 80%. A little lower for the stretch growth, clustering mostly around the 30s. And then similar pattern to when we look at that by ethnicity. Notice that the gap is a little bit less for mathematics, so our students with disabilities and our students without disabilities, both at 58%, both achieving 58%, which is just a little bit higher than what we would expect at that 50% rate. So a little bit about the personalized instruction. As you know, the test is just one part of the information. It gives us standards-aligned information about where students are in their learning. And then for our students in K-5, they also have a personalized learning pathway that provides lessons to help them to fill in those gaps so that they can access on-grade level instruction during the normal day in the normal classroom. Our goal is between 30 and 49 minutes. And keep in mind that if a student is at or above grade level, they will not have very many gaps, right? So they don't need to spend as much time. But when we have those students that are 1, 2, or more grade levels behind, they need to get those minutes. And so what we're seeing here is the average number of minutes by grade level, well into the 30. Again, the kindergartners, remember, this is their whole fall going up to the winter test, and so they will be behind because less of the students take that test. And it's a very, it's not a self-selected group of students. It's obviously selected by the teachers who participate. We also see a high passing rate. So quantity is great, but even if you spend the right amount of time, if you're not performing at a high rate, then you're not going to be making the gains in your learning. So that 92 to 97% passing rate is very good. And this is, so you just saw math, and this is reading. Slightly less in reading, the average minutes just a little bit below that 30% mark. And again, they have higher performance, so you may have less students putting in that full 30 to 49 minutes than you do in math. And we see still a very high passing rate. 86% is the lowest at 4th grade, and then well into the 90s for K2. All right, so I want to share with you this information, and forgive me, it did come up, and I'm trying to remember what meeting it was at, but somebody had asked about the correlations with smarter balanced assessments in iReady. And so iReady just finished a correlation study, and a study in Washington State specifically. So the SBA scores here and the iReady diagnostic scores. So on the left here, you see the ELA, the correlation with ELA, SBA. On the right, math. And then the bars indicate the fall, winter, and spring iReady, reading on one side, math on the other. Fall is in the lightest and spring is in the darkest. And here are our correlations. So just a reminder, correlation is not causation. Correlation is when you take two metrics and you examine their relationship, specifically how they change. So if both of them go up at a similar pace, then they'll be positive. If they go down, they'll be negative. And then the magnitude. Okay, so for example, if we're talking about, and I looked this up today, this is a true fact, height and shoe size, the correlation is 0.6, which is pretty strong. But it does turn out that there are short people with big feet and tall people with small feet. But there's a correlation. However, height doesn't cause shoe size, and nor does your feet length cause your height, right? There are other things that have a correlation, but they don't really have a true connection. So, for example, it turns out that the number of pirates and the amount of temperature change during global warming has a very positive correlation, but they're completely not connected, right? When we look at a correlation between two tests like the Smarter Balanced Assessment and iReady, both are aligned to the Common Core State Standards. Both are designed to test them. They use technology-enhanced items. Curriculum Associates was, in fact, informed by the development of Smarter Balance when they worked on it. So it's not a surprise that there is a high correlation. So when you get to 0.7, you would say that's strong. As one goes up, so does the other, right? All of the correlations by grade level and subject are above 8.8 for iReady and the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And in addition, the correlation gets stronger going to spring, which we would expect as well, because they're both spring tests. They're both aligned to the same standards. So again, this isn't a causality situation, but it does give us some confidence that when we look at students' performance on this assessment, that it is testing the same thing, testing the same standards. All right, so summary. The iReady diagnostic is a very important tool in understanding student learning, both mastery and gaps in learning for our individual students. It helps us to understand our system overall. All grades, K through 8, just demonstrate high performance and high growth in reading and in math, except for grade 6. Our median typical growth higher than 50%, and then performance above that 50th percentile in the national norms. A higher percentage of students early on grade level and above in Everett Public Schools than in the state results or the national norms. That's something very much to celebrate. And at the halfway mark, we are seeing substantial improvements in relative performance of our students, and particularly in those groups that most need to improve. And that tells me it's doing its job, because the point of this is to support improvement in learning by personalized online instruction that fills in gaps and helps our students access on grade level instruction. And with that, thank you
very much, Dr. Matthews. And now is the opportunity to ask questions or make comments. Director Mason, you have your hand up first.
Yeah, this is great information, and I really appreciate looking at the growth of students. And I just want to give a shout out to all the teachers out there, because they are the ones doing the work every day and making this happen, and it is awesome. My question is, not every student is growing or is growing as fast as we would hope, especially during these difficult times post-pandemic or somewhere kind of post-pandemic. And so what happens to students when we hit spring and they run a diagnostic? And I understand what a great tool this is for teachers throughout the year when they have the student, but what happens when we hit spring and we still have students 2 and unfortunately probably 3 grades behind, and off to summer they go and a new classroom next year?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The first is, all along the way, our teachers, our administrators are looking at iReady data collaboratively and planning additional interventions. So through categorical programs or after school interventions. So there are interventions in addition to this that are happening. In addition, this data is available to the schools as students move up, and it is used to identify where students might need additional help. And the tool is open all summer, so students can continue to learn throughout the summer. Even my office supports school students through the middle of August in learning. Remember that when we have students that are 2 or 3 years behind, our goal might not be to get them right to standard in that year, but what our goal is for them to experience success and growth in that year in a way that continues to engage them, so that if they meet that stretch goal more than 1 year in a row, that they should be at standard. So I don't know if there's anything else from the teaching. Did I miss anything?
No.
No, I just think of math in particular because it builds on itself so much. And, reading is to me a more fluid progression, whereas
Right.
math year to year, there are definitely building blocks. And if they're missed.
Yeah. So I will tell you that they have made a couple of improvements in the program that are helping teachers and students with that exact issue. And that is a report that scaffolds the learning for a teacher. So a teacher can run a report based on what they're about to teach and look at the individual performance of students to see who needs some learning before you can teach this topic, right? So they have a series of reports, and then they have ideas about how you might go ahead and fill in that gap. So I know what you're saying, that it does build on itself, and you just have to be relentless.
But it is providing really powerful information to
Yes.
the teachers as
Absolutely.
they work with the students. So thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions, Director?
I just have one question. Thank you regarding those students that are 1 or 2 years behind. How engaged are the parents in that knowledge and in the support, the parents and caregivers, especially when it comes to summer? Because we had all those federal dollars that we could do a lot of summer school. I don't know what our summer school plan, just not off the top of my head, what the summer school plan is this year, but I don't want to overwhelm these kids with 6 hours of class every day or put that on the parents throughout the summer. But is there a plan to engage the parents during the summer on how to engage with iReady so that they can get that little bit ahead?
Yeah,
so parents know what to do.
Right. So we work with communications and do a broad forecasting of how does your student access it from home? How does it work? Why would you do it? But our families are also seeing that throughout the year. They're seeing the scores at conferences. They can see the scores in Home Access Center. So for the most part, they should be aware going into summer. And then this is more, how would you manage this at home? What's appropriate? Because we do want students out playing in summer too.
That's
we
what I
want them to hit that.
Because
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. Because Jeannie, as you're coming, it is sort of that global versus what my child needs directed at me for what are my opportunities as a caregiver or parent.
So we're going to have a full high school program. We will have a little smaller middle school program that will include middle school summer academy that will have English language arts and mathematics. We'll also have our bridge to accelerated math, which we've had in the past, and our multilingual learner program. For elementary, that's where we won't have a program, but what we're going to do is provide resources on the website. We have a summer reading challenge, a reading adventure, summer math challenge. I had those incorrect and swapped around. Outline for the summer, we have teams working on that. And we will also have resources attached to iReady promoting it because it's a great resource that they can have at their fingertips and they will have available throughout the summer as well. And so we'll be sending out that information to families as well.
Well, teachers are just, because I'm trying to get down to that individual student. That the parent of that student that has need, something will directly go to Mr. or Mrs. whomever.
Yeah, actually, I'd just like to share a little bit.
Yeah.
Right now, we have elementary conferences happening, and one of the pieces that our teachers often do is they actually share the parent reports. So at an elementary conference, it's not just, hey, this is how Timmy is doing in class and in math and in reading, but you can actually run that iReady report and share with parents, here are your students' strengths, and here are the areas for opportunities that we're going to continue to build on using interventions, flexible small groups, one-on-one support, reteaching opportunities from now until the end of the year. Because our goal is, of course, we don't want to have to rely on a summer program to remediate students. We want to actually do it in real time. So that engagement component comes from the reports that we can share with parents right now, and we can continue to share those reports. Many of our grade levels also do those the spring diagnostics, which isn't necessarily required at all grade levels, but it does provide an opportunity to kind of refresh and say, there's a lot of growth that happens from now until the end of the year. And it also sets the learning path for the summer as well. So what we do is we intentionally have teachers using those reports, having conversations with families. So it's not just about how many minutes is the student having iReady practice, but it's truly on, here are the areas that we're going to continue to work on in class. Here are the areas they can work on with the program, and we'll continue to move that forward for the students.
Thank you.
I do have some questions that I would like to piggyback off of Director Mitchell's concern. We have, as you mentioned, the grades kindergarten through 8th grade, in which you have several kids that are listed still 2 to 3 grades behind. And that won't, hopefully we would like to see a change there, but there will still be some students that fit that category. And my concern is we're approaching the end of the school year. What attempts do we have in order to ensure that during the summertime, that 2 to 3 grades behind doesn't grow to 3 and 4 grades behind during that summer period? I know, we plan on perhaps allowing kids to continue with iReady, but sometimes when you're that far behind, you need one-on-one personal supports to provide the instruction necessary to keep that child either at that level or improving, so that when they come back in, the follow-on grade the next year, they're not still 3 to 4 grades behind now.
Absolutely. I think the best answer really is in response to what Dr. Boughton was sharing. Some of that work is really going to take place this spring, and making sure that starting now, especially with the spring conferences, that we're really sharing with families where a student is and identifying some of those places and not waiting for the summer. So that's going to be the anticipatory step, so that we make sure that we're engaging kids right now. We have extended day at many of our schools. They've identified students. There are small groups taking place. And then when we get to summer and we get closer to summer, more of that communication is going to come out student by student. And we will have some programming for middle school that will address some students around those areas, but we will make lots of resources available for students.
I think ultimately our game plan is to work with students and remediate those skills now while we have the expert practitioners in the classroom. We are blessed in Everett. We have amazing teachers and support staff who are doing everything they can. It's an all hands on deck as we're moving towards the end of the year. And so while we do have programs like a summer reading program where we partner with our community libraries, both Snow Isle and Everett Public Libraries, to ensure that students have access to literacy. We have our math calendars and at-home activities so that families can balance how much work to do to combat the summer slide. However, our best game plan is to ensure that we are providing just-in-time supports and intervention and instruction to our students at high quality levels, so that the students don't have that huge gap to battle in the summer slide. So our best bet is to invest right now with the expert practitioners in our classrooms to ensure that students are getting that high quality instruction, to close gaps now and not really relying on a summer program to do so. We do have some summer programming that will help to support some of those pieces, but I think it's really just trying to find the balance of fiscal responsibility and support of students. But while we have them in schools right now, that's our focus.
Director Herman, I think, and then Director Nichols. Thank you.
This is a quick one. I'm just thinking back to last week. This feathers into MTSS Tier 2 and Tier 3, and it just all aligns with that same concept. Okay, thanks.
Director Nichols?
So how long have we been using iReady now overall?
We're in our fifth full year of implementation. So at the middle school, this is the first year where all students have been tested. Yeah.
So do we think we have enough data now to really kind of project growth, or like where we should be to measure against those types of?
Well, normally I would say yes, because 5 years is a lot of data, and
Right.
it would be fun to look at that. But one of the challenges, of course, that we have is that gap of when students were at home. So we still did the iReady assessments, and we still provided all of those interventions, but it's a challenge to know whether or not students were fully engaged, and whether or not those tests that are taken at home really reflect fully, an individual student, and not because anybody would be malicious or cheat or anything like that, but we all want to help students. And if you're home with yours and they ask you a question, you help them, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard to know during that period of time whether or not that's really the best data. And that's fair. That's true about the state as well. I mean, they have this gap.
So when we were looking at the growth data, and you were saying that this percentage of people improved by one or more grade levels or positions, or however it was worded, do we know specifically where those kids are moving to? So are all the people that are 3 or more grade levels below, if they're improving, are they just moving up to the 2 or more grade levels below, is there big jumps? Is it just not consistent enough to make that kind of generalization?
It varies.
Yeah.
So you saw on one of the slides 614 students who have jumped from 1, 2, or 3 levels below all the way to early or to mid grade level, which means wherever they were, whether they're 3 grade levels behind or 1, they made it all the way to mid or on grade level. So it varies, and I don't know that necessarily there's a pattern where you could say, if you're 2 grade levels behind and you're this, then you're going to be at standard, because it depends on how much you engage in the program. It depends on how much you engage in the classroom. Because remember, the real learning takes place 180 days with a qualified teacher teaching to the standards, right? This is the fill in the gap.
So I have a lot more nerdy questions about this data, but the last one, I think, just based on time, is since we are still seeing, even though there's smaller numbers, and I think that's great, and I think this might be more of a learning department academics question, we're still seeing kids that are 3 or more grade levels below. Does that mean are we advancing children to the next grade when they're not meeting standard?
I think that we have some students who are not meeting standard, but one of the challenges that we have with this set of data, and it's actually one of the opportunities as well, is that we can see a student might not be at grade level standard, generally speaking, in an iReady set of data, but there are definitely some strengths within there. So phonics, phonemic awareness might be really high, and that student may have tested out and met standard there, but they're not yet at standard for perhaps informational comprehension on informational text. And so one of the things that we've been doing is really analyzing that data and building in some spiraling instruction so that we can focus more on the areas that students need support, additional support and time. So we do have students who advance into the next grade level, even if they're not necessarily at standard. But the plan with this particular program and data is to close that gap. So you may have a student who comes into a first grade 2 levels behind, 2 or 3 grade levels below, but ends the year only 1 grade level below. So we're closing the gap, and as we continue to support that student in the following year, we hope to close that gap even further. So we do have students who struggle, we do have students who are behind, but providing opportunities like this to gather data and really help us to focus in on what we need to do differently to help close gaps for kids is the most important thing that we can do.
And I think going forward, that's one thing I'd like to I'm sure we track it one way or the other, but look at, how many kids have we been advancing that weren't at standard versus now we've implemented these things and now we're getting much less or much, however it works out. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Student reps, do you have any questions you would like to ask or comments? Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We've gone a little bit further as far as the timeline for this presentation. We're going to take a 10-minute break now.
Yeah.
We're on time.
Well, we're on time. We have
Fine.
6:24 is supposed to be budget development update.
Right. We're exactly on time for our meeting.
Okay. Good. Okay, we shall go then to section 12.0 and 01, and we will hear from Andy Tess on the budget development update.
The mouse is sticky. Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Saltzman, President Lassane, Board of Directors. Today, I will be providing a budget development update. I will go over an update on this year's budget. It's not turning pages. All right, hold on one second. But is it sharing? I don't think it's sharing. Yeah. Now, of course, it's not escaping. See?
Brian can't do it. Huh. What have you done?
That's okay.
That's what an IT person should never say.
But she's not sharing.
No, it's not sharing. All right.
Okay, now we'll try it.
We are sharing.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll get this eventually, right? Again, thank you. So I will be going over updates on this year's budget, an outlook for next year's budget, highlights on pending legislative outcomes, and an overview of the budget timeline and next steps for the budget development. So good news, our current projected fund balance is expected to be approximately 5.9%. This is an increase from our December meeting for the November projections of 5.3%, and that's primarily due to increase in projected transportation revenues. In addition, we're expecting to have carryover in our ESSER funds. This is primarily related to the fact that our enrollment in our EVA, our Everett Virtual Academy, is down, and we plan to use those supports on social, emotional, and student supports for the next fiscal year. And as well as we've been able to apply for safety net revenues for special education of approximately $4.1 million. And we will know the awarded amount in the June timeframe. We don't always receive the total amount that we get for the application. These revenues would support current expected special education expenditures for this fiscal year. In February, I went over our projected deficit of $27.9 million, and I want to remind us that we adopted a resolution for a reduction educational program to help support this, to help eliminate this deficit. And again, I also stated that there was no bailout from the legislature, and I'm going to go over the impacts on the next slides of what that looks like.
So we do have some minor legislative impacts projected for the 23-24 for next fiscal year, but we are really seeing that these have no significant changes to the anticipated budget deficit. Additionally, we're seeing a slowdown in expected revenue increases in the state, so this could impact future funding. And I'll go over in detail in the next slide the impacts related to possible increases for special education funding, potential changes in our inflationary factor, and what the legislature might provide in safety net funds for pupil transportation. We have both a House bill and a Senate bill proposing changes to our special education funding factors. And what that means is that we will possibly have slight increases in what we receive for special education for kiddos who are enrolled in special education. Additionally, the legislature are proposing changes to our inflationary factor, or what we have called the implicit price deflator, IPD, or cost of living adjustments to the funding for the district revenues. One of the changes adds predictability and certainty to school districts for planning future budgets. Currently, our IPD increases for school funding are based on projected inflation. Instead, the new language would actually change that to using prior inflation, so we would be able to provide updates and have a better certainty on what that IPD would look like in future years. In addition, both the House and the Senate are proposing an IPD, or an inflationary factor, of 3.7% currently. We are also following House Bill 1550, which establishes a transition to kindergarten program. This would replace our transitional kindergarten program, and this would actually be a decrease in funding overall for the district. It also treats the funding more like a grant, and there'd be no guaranteed increases in funding through our inflationary factor. Another bill we're tracking is around pupil transportation, and this would create special passenger safety net program and provide possible funding around for kiddos who get transported out of district, or kiddos who are in transition for housing and those type of items. But what this bill also does is it requires the OSPI to analyze school district transportation costs and allocation and report that back to the legislator to hopefully have a new funding model in the future that actually better supports our transportation needs. As we look at the budget development timeline, in early February, we had a board study session around the budget development. On February 28th, the board approved a resolution for a reduction plan, or a reduced education program. Today, we are going over our budget development update. And on May 9th, kind of one of the highlights of the year for us in budget is the ASB presentations that the students will be providing for the high school. And then our expected first reading of our operating budget for next fiscal year is on June 27th. So next steps on developing our budget. We will continue the implementation of the reduced education program. We will be reviewing our expenditure and revenue patterns as we build the budget for next fiscal year. We'll be also implementing legislative outcomes, ultimately looking at IPD and any other legislative factors to look at where we're seeing things in our favor and things not in our favor, and evaluating the IPD impacts. We will be presenting the ASB budgets in May, and then we will finalize the development of all of our other funds, our capital fund, our debt service fund, and our transportation vehicle fund. Thank you. Any questions?
Directors, have questions for Ms. Tess? Yes.
Just
Director
one.
Nichols.
It just caught me off guard, and I'm trying to figure out where this phrase, the implementation of reduced education program. What education programs are we reducing?
So that's the board resolution that was adopted. It's called a reduced educational program. So that's just the technical terminology of what that resolution was. So ultimately going through that process and evaluating and all of that piece of it, and making sure that staffing and everything is aligned with that.
Well, that's a terrible name. Can we amend that resolution?
I think it's just the language of how.
Any further questions? Yes, Director Mason.
I have a couple. So this is potentially a maybe not a question, well, it's a question with a comment for the cabinet and Dr. Salzman. So I was very pleased to see that our fund balance has moved from 5.3 to 5.9, which, you know, every percentage is about 3.8 million, which is pretty significant. But even just that small difference is $2.3 million. And, you know, our board policy states that we want to remain above 5%, which we have done all along. But it does, to me, offer an opportunity to look at, especially as we're eliminating positions and people and their livelihoods, that we might have an opportunity to go back and reassess some of those positions. And I'm just curious if there has been any conversation around that and how those priorities would be made going forward.
I think there's conversations. I think priorities will be developed based on feedback from our stakeholders, as well as we go through each line item of the budget to sort of see what's favorable in our nature and what's unfavorable as we go through each line item.
Yeah, I guess it's a comment for follow-up because we're in the process of eliminating positions right now, and it's a very timely topic, I guess. And then a couple other questions. One, on slide 4, why do we separate out the salary increases? And are those salary increases a combination of what the state funds and then we fund locally?
And I need to go back to the slide to see what you're referencing. On this piece of it, it was a way to estimate what our deficit was going to be. And so we were looking at salary is our biggest increases overall. And so that's sort of what we want to show in regards to the biggest, as we look at cost, what impacts the district, really salary is the biggest cost for us.
Is that 27.7 million a combination of increases that the state provides and we provide locally?
It's an increase of, most of it is based on contractual language and based on a predicted IPD.
I'm talking about the revenues that we get though.
Oh, the revenues, yes. That is based on a combination of state and local revenues that we're expected to get.
I just don't understand why 27.7 million of salary increases is called out specifically. Like, why aren't we calling out special education, lack of funding, or I don't understand that slide, I guess, why it's not just included in our expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know it's the biggest part, but.
And a part of it's because we haven't gone through each line item of the budget as we present it typically to you in that regard. And so, and that piece of it.
Okay. And is that 27.7 million based on a 6% salary increase potentially?
Potentially, correct.
So we're calling it out, but we don't even know what the increase is going to be. And potentially right now it's looking like maybe closer to 3.7.
Right. And as we go through this, there's not significant change. As I've looked at, there's not a significant change between it's more favorable whether we use a 3.7% IPD versus a 6% IPD, but based on our contracted language and the bargaining for next year's increases, it's a minor overall favorable outcome. It's about 2.4 million. But it's in our favor, as we go through.
That's pretty significant for people that are in a reduced, being riffed, I guess. And then lastly, my other question was about the 4.1 budgeted for the safety net. How do we budget for that going forward? Do we estimate what we hope to get?
So last year we budgeted based on what we got in the prior year.
Okay.
For this fiscal year. And so that'll be something we do to evaluate that. Piece of it is, do we continue to use what we got in the prior year if we expect those expenditures to continue? So we will work with our special education department to assess whether we should continue that or keep it more conservative in that regard.
Do you know what the budgeted amount was for this year?
It was about, I believe, 2.9 million.
So if we get 4.1, again, that's another potential.
And that's, I just want to clarify.
And it's not, I know it's not guaranteed yet, but it's an if.
Yeah, and typically we don't get what we submit an application for. So it's close, but we typically get less than what the application is provided.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions, Director? I have a couple questions, and thank you very much, Andy, for your synopsis. I really appreciate it. On slide number 8, when you talk about House Bill 1550, we typically spend about 10,000, or that's what we receive currently now from 10,619 per pupil for transition kindergarten, right?
Yes, that's the current funding. And based on what's currently in the bill, that we would expect to get less.
So it's a decrease in the amount of money that we will be getting to support the kids through that program.
Correct.
And my question to you is, would we then typically utilize the funds from our levy, educational program levy, or from our reserves in order to continue the program to support it at the level at which we have in the past supported it at?
So we'd have to, it actually switches what the type of program can be based on the current bill. So it would no longer be a transitional kindergarten program, it'd be a transition to kindergarten program. And so I would give Shelley a little more details on the impacts to the program itself.
So my question is, when we start looking at what the program would be, my question is, we have typically provided at a certain level an expectation. So the House bill will fund only at this expectation. Are we going to continue at our expectations of the program since we have a very good transition to kindergarten program?
The second substitute House Bill 1550, and please bear with me because I haven't read the second Stryker amendment. I'm pretty well versed on the first. However, this bill radically shifts what this program looks like. It is not a transitional kindergarten program. It is a transition to kindergarten program, which is a preschool program that would begin in September. It would utilize the Department of Child and Youth Family Services Early Achievers models, which is a preschool program. Our current transitional kindergarten program is a kindergarten on-ramp. It is a kindergarten program. These are kindergarten students who start school in January. It is a robust program in helping students to build their school readiness skills. Transition to kindergarten is a very different program. So yes, the funding looks different, and yes, we would have to backfill. However, this current bill prohibits transitional kindergarten programs as it exists now. We would not be able to backfill the services that we're providing despite the funding.
Good information. Thank you very much for your clarification of this program. You have a piggyback, okay.
No, I'll just be interested in your analysis of the recent one. The intention is to allow those programs to continue. And so obviously here in Everett, that is absolutely what we're hoping for. So I think it'll need to shake out a little bit because I hope that we can continue those programs. They're very, very helpful and data backed by data on how well they serve our students. So.
My next question is regarding transportation funding. For transportation funding, we usually receive that the following year, not in the current year, but the next year after. When you start talking about House Bill or Senate Bill 5174, pupil transportation in slide 8, you talk about OSPI would require them to analyze the school district. That doesn't tell me that they would provide the delta that would be in that particular.
Correct. So the original intent was hopefully to get a new model for transportation funding. However, that's not coming to fruition. What they are asking the OSPI to do is analyze the data so that they can help in the future build a model. So in substitute to that, they want to provide funding for a safety net program for special passengers so that for students who we transport out of district, or students in that regard could help offset some of the funding we're not getting to support those services we need to provide. And we don't know the value of what that will be at this point in time.
At this point in time, that's correct. Okay, I understand. Thank you so much for clarification. Are there any other questions or concerns, comments?
And Jen, thank you. Director Herman, thank you for all your support in that and following those things. I like hearing your updates here. So.
Thank you very much. At this point, we'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. We have reconvened, and our next presenter is Ms. Kathy Rees, who will give us a communications update.
Thank you. I hope you all got your second wind and are ready for this. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the communications update. We do this annually to review things that we have done throughout the year. So we're going to talk briefly about the year in review. We're going to look at some data and then have a chance for you to ask questions at the end. One of the things we focused on this year, first I have to tell you who's on our team. So last year when we did this presentation, there were 4 of us. Now there are 3, but Dr. Salzman is kind of our honorary 4th sometimes, so he got to be in our picture. So Jennifer and Linda and I are the team of 3 that you have for communications now. And one of the things we focused a lot on this year is doing surveys for different reasons and helping support different departments for surveys of staff and of families. We started out the year with a communication survey, and then we did several different surveys for the district calendar, as you're aware. We did surveys for the budget and for the Everett Virtual Academy Future Options. And all of these are opportunities for us to receive feedback and to act on that feedback. So the results of all of these surveys are posted on the website on the engagement page. So people can see when the survey was run, what questions were asked, what answers we came up with, and how we used that. And I wanted to just briefly talk about the communication survey. We did this in September, and we were asking what is working well and what opportunities to improve the way our districts and schools communicate. And some of the positive highest rankings we received where they really like the way we communicate in multiple ways, the information, so they can get it in a lot of different places. And they also like that communication is very timely and it's solid information. A few of the areas that they said we could see improvement on is one, they'd like to see a common platform for everything, which we've heard before. And we have made progress in that, but for some of the programs that we use, they don't participate in the single sign-on. So you have to sign on to them separately. So we can't incorporate that into the single platform. But as we move forward and look at new products, we do ask that they be part of a single sign-on so we can progress in that way. And then we were asked to incorporate the add to calendar option on the calendars for the school events. And now if you go to the calendar, you can see up in the right-hand corner, there is an add to calendar option, so you can put it right onto your personal calendar. And the other one was to streamline messaging for families that have multiple students. And we can do this, but it prohibits then if you have school-specific messages that are different. So it takes, we talk to the parent, try to figure out what they exactly want. We can try to reduce the number of district messages, but if they're at different schools, they're going to be receiving different messages. So it takes a little bit of finagling, but it's more of a one-on-one conversation than a broad sweeping solution. But we did act on these and we appreciate getting the feedback. Another thing we worked on this year is really developing the communication skills in others. So we want to be able to help other people do the communication they need to do. We started doing monthly social media drop-in sessions so people can get on Teams and ask questions and have us help them with their different social media accounts. We opened a Canvas portal for communications, and to be honest, since we're not academics, we had never even been in Canvas before. So it was really helpful for us to get in there and see how it's used and see how people look at it, and then fill it with information that will help our staff. They learn all the to-dos on how to do Blackboard Connect or how to do social media or how to do the Let's Talk platform. So they can do it in their own time and watch different modules that we created for them so they can improve their communication skills along those items. We also just last week had a couple brand champion trainings, and we have another one in April to ensure that all of our products that we put out to the community are appropriately branded with Everett Clinic branding. We do individual trainings for the website, for Blackboard Connect, and for Canva. Canva is a new one we started using. It's the one that we create a lot of our images on. So if you see social media images, we create those in there, so we can do most of our design in-house using Canva. And a lot of our staff are starting to use it too, so it's pretty fun and creative. We also have been providing support for the SMORE newsletter. So if you've been getting those nicely formatted e-newsletters from either schools, or we do one from Dr. Saltzman at the beginning of each semester. Those are in the platform called SMORE. And then we also, there's a required para-educator communication course that the state provides or requires, and we provide the training for that. We've been really focusing on trying to get some proactive media this year. So if you've seen any of these stories in the Herald, we had some really great coverage with our Everett Ready program, with the World Language Assessment, our reunification work that we did, the Guaranteed Admission program, and then the annual Cascade High Food Drive. We have a couple stories right now we're in the works on, so there'll be hopefully some more coming up. And of course, we all know that Brian was on the front page of the Herald a couple weeks ago, so we continue to bring that up. So proactive media is a really good way for us to start getting the positive stories out there, because there's so much great work going on people really don't know. We've focused a lot this year in working with safety and security to help support in emergencies and preparing for crises. So one thing we've always done is just provide messaging support when schools have to deal with a situation they don't know how to communicate it. We help them with that support. We also are very much a part of the reunification work, the Emergency Operations Center training that we've had. I'm also part of the Public Information Officer Network, which is the network for all Snohomish County wide. We meet with emergency management and the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department and talk about public information officer duties. And then we also did a communication training for administration, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But first, I want you to see some of the videos that we created this year as part of our supporting emergency preparedness. We created a Run, Hide, Fight training video that will be used in the upcoming years as our safety and security department trains our schools with that. We've created 2 new reunification videos, one for staff and one for families, using footage that we filmed when we did the dry run earlier this year. And then I know it seems simple, but we did a video on how to use the Sonatrol system in the CRC so you don't set off the alarm if you come in off hours. It's important. Communication plans, we do have a crisis communication plan we update every year. It basically is a packet that if somebody in communications is not here, you could take that packet and you would know who to communicate, how and when, under what circumstances, as well as having a bunch of templated messages in there for all these different types of crises you could imagine. We also created kind of a flow chart for how to communicate if we have a death of a student or a staff member. And that might seem, I don't know, like it should be easy. We just know we tell people, but we found out that there's so many different intricacies in our systems that we really don't want to have a family get a late lunch due call if their student passed away. So we need to make sure every single system gets the information. So this was to make sure that everyone knew who they had to talk to so we could best support the family and they wouldn't get any of those missed calls that, the attendance call or something like that we really don't want to have happen. So that we just recently created and we'll be rolling out to schools shortly. And the last one is the school-based communication liaison. And that's what I talked about for the communication training for administration. So this last summer, all administration went through a safety and security training. I believe it was 4 or 5 hours. It was quite long and thorough, and our safety and security coordinator, Topher Ferreira, did an amazing job. And he and I worked together to create this template, and this is only a little tiny bit of it. It's actually a full front and back. And the purpose of this is, if there is some sort of emergent issue at a school, of course, the first thing the administration does is they try to take care of the issue and take care of their kids, right? They're not immediately thinking like, what message do I send to who? That's our job to do. So we created this template, and their job is to assign one person, either like an assistant principal or an office manager or somebody in their area that will be the liaison for communications. And they are the ones that are on campus when we are not on campus. So they can tell us what's happening, when it happened. We have the 5 basic questions we ask. And then we will prepare a staff message, a student message, a parent message, a website message, what you can text, like all the way down. There's what would go in a phone call, what would go in social media, how to answer the phone. All those things would be filled out, immediately sent back to them, and they will have all the messages they need taken care of. It also says on here, we will send your phone call, we will post your social media unless you tell us differently. So the purpose is to take the immediate burden away from the administration so they can focus on their school, but also to help them not forget, it's not just parents you need to talk to, but your teachers in your classrooms need to know what's happening, and your students in your classroom. So what can we say and what should we not say? And then, so this would be the immediate communication. We also have an intermediate and then a final. And depending on how long the crisis would occur, you could have 2 or 3 intermediates. But the purpose is just to keep the appropriate messaging continuing. And for the person who's answering the phone, they know what they can say and who they direct where. So I'd have to say we developed this summer and we haven't had to use it yet. So that's a good thing, but I think it will be very helpful if we ever have to. So the other pieces of just ongoing updates and maintenance, Parent University is one that we continue to update. You can see the bottom left photo. After we did the calendar survey, we saw some feedback that a few people said, what is the purpose of Learning Improvement Friday? Why don't we cut that as part of the calendar? And so we made a video about what is the purpose of Learning Improvement Friday, so people could see why that's valuable to teachers and why that's helpful to students. So it's really a responsive type of place where we can put current issues that we see people are asking. Website updates, of course, we do that ongoing. Even though we just created this website 3 years ago, I think, our website content management system has been purchased by another company. So in the next year or 2, we'll have to redo the whole thing over again. So be looking forward to that. We don't have a time frame on it, but it is pending. We do all the new photos and videos, internals, external communications. You can see up in the upper right-hand corner, that is one of the communications that Dr. Saltzman did at the beginning of the second semester. It went out to all families, and we had 24,400 views on that. So some people liked it so much they read it twice, Dr. Saltzman. And then we do promotional and informational campaigns. So when you talk about communications, campaigns is about information you want to get out to people. So one of them here you can see in the top left corner, and this is an image we made in Canva, just so you know. We wanted to do a campaign about crosswalk safety, and it was multi-tiered and it was to multi-audiences. So we did one specifically to students. Don't hold your phone and read it while you're walking the crosswalk, look both ways, that kind of thing. But also we did it for parents so they can be aware of crosswalks as well, because it's not just the driver, it's the walker too. So campaigns like that we participate in. The bottom right one was around the SAT, and this in itself was a video, but that campaign had stationary images as well as videos, and why SAT is important, ways that can help you, how can you do better in the SAT. So it's a multimodal campaign as well. And then of course, if there's presentations to the community, we take care of those as well. And here's our stats. Facebook, we increased in the last year about a little over 3%. Twitter, our followers, about 6% increase. Instagram is up 11%. That's getting to be a pretty popular platform for us. And our mobile app downloads are up about 9%. And you can see from the bottom just different types of things that we are sharing. The middle one is from Canva, but the right one is one of our kiddos. And that's such a fantastic picture. I love it. So we try to share it where we can. And over on the left, you see Dr. Saltzman with some students and creative way to hide a student who is not FERPA cleared, if you can see the teddy bear in the picture. So these are our social media stats. And that is all I have. So do you have any questions?
I just have one correction to the Canva picture, if I can. Because I believe it's a policy, I think maybe Durham or whatever, but our kids never walk in front of a bus. They always drop the kids off so they walk onto the sidewalk. So that even on Seattle Hill Road, I've never seen anywhere I've driven by a bus.
Cross the street all the time.
They have to cross the street.
They cross in front of it.
Yeah,
Oh.
they get dropped off on the side of the street, but they can cross.
Oh,
They can cross in front of
well,
them.
that is so weird because they, in Seattle Hill Road, I wonder what roads they do that on, because in Seattle Hill Road, they pick up on one side and they pick up on the other.
Is it a 4-lane road?
It's a 3-lane road.
Maybe
And
that's
so
why.
versus neighborhood, but it's interesting. It's just interesting because, you know, we get on that 3-lane road on Sail Hill Road, people will stop where they don't have to because it's 3. But I'm thinking kids never cross, they don't cross Sail Hill Road. They might cross one of the 140s, but they never cross the main road. So I take back correcting a photo because it does happen. I have just never seen it happen because of the roads I drive. And
All right.
so, but
Thank you.
anyway, it's great that you have that. And and every year I personally love that you don't have to stop on odd number roads. If it's an odd lane number road, that's when you don't stop. It's a very easy thing to remember. But otherwise, thank you.
Next question?
It wasn't so much a question, but I'm really glad you're helping out at the teachers that have the capacity to sort of do more with social media or videos. A year or two ago, one of my daughter's teachers actually did an update of what their class was doing in a video, and so was
nice.
able to send that out. And it was really great as a parent to see the teacher in action, hear her voice. So anytime teachers, principals can just do a 2-minute, you're just seeing, hearing them. I think it's a really powerful connection. So I'm glad that there's sort of that support because it is above and beyond.
Videos are much more engaging than,
They are.
yeah, for sure.
And keeping it internal and not putting it on social media so the parent can actually see.
It was a great classroom update, right? And I
Nice.
thought, yeah.
Director Nichols, you had a comment? Director Mason? Student Rep Collins? Student Rep Gilbertson? No? Well, I would like to say it's great. I really appreciate it. I really do. I like the videos because I've gone through some of them and looked at the videos and I thought, just amount of time to keep your attention, you know? So,
They're getting shorter and shorter, aren't they?
yeah, just amount of time, just the right amount of time to keep your attention. And especially the ones on Parent U. Because they don't need to be very long and they don't need to be elaborate, and I appreciate that. And what is your response for Instagram increasing more rapidly than Twitter? Is it the platform of the day? Is that?
It kind of is for the, I don't want to say this, for the younger generation. They kind of prefer Instagram. It attracts a different type of population. There's still a lot of people interested in Twitter, and we see a lot of use on that and a lot of responses. But we're actually trying to create our posts in Instagram to be a little more younger generation engaging.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. We'll now move to Section 13.0, which is unfinished business, but I see that there are no unfinished business scheduled for this meeting tonight. We'll move on to Section 14.0, which is new business. And the first item is approval of the elementary school boundary adjustments and an update on the 2019 high school boundary changes. Mr. Gunn.
Is this right?
I don't think we're sharing.
I want to watch you, Brian. It's not seeing. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. There we go.
Good evening. Tonight I am presenting 2 items. The first one is a request that the board approve an attendance boundary adjustment between Lowell Elementary School and View Ridge Elementary School. And the second item is an update on the 2019 high school boundary changes, which is currently in its 3rd year of a 4-year implementation. So first I'm going to make some comments about the elementary school boundary change proposal. This would move an enrollment area that it currently attends Lowell Elementary School to attend View Ridge Elementary School effective this fall in direct response to the construction of a large multifamily housing development on the old Kmart site just south of Evergreen Middle School, known as Four Corners. This proposal is also a real-life illustration of the growth of our North End elementary schools from multifamily housing units, as we discussed at the last board meeting, I believe it was, with the enrollment update to the board. Boundary changes can be very emotional, and they're usually difficult to do. There are complex issues and projections that are produced that we use, and let's face it, they impose a level of change on the organization, our parents, our students, and staff, and change can be difficult. I'll summarize our guiding principles for when we make boundary changes, and that is that we strive for long-term solutions over short-term solutions, and we do it with a district-wide perspective and try to do what's right for kids. So those are the guiding principles that we used when we did this. The last time we had a similar boundary change was in 2012. It was also an area between Penny Creek and Silver First Elementary Schools where there were 16 existing families, 16 existing students, 12 families, and it was in an area that was just heading into construction of a number of single family homes. It wasn't a multi-family development, it was a single family, but it was the same idea. The units hadn't been built yet, and we were proposing that we change the boundaries to put them into a school where there was a lot more room than there was if they would attend the school that they're living, that the units are being built in. In that instance, we contacted the families and that were affected by the move, directly affected, in other words, those that lived in that boundary area, to let them know what we were proposing. The board approved that change on the consent agenda. And one difference in this instance here is that we're actually coming to you with a presentation and not putting it on the consent agenda. So we use the same process except for what I just mentioned in this case. We also, in that instance, and we replicated it here, are recommending that all of the families or the students that currently live in those areas would be guaranteed a transfer approval to stay at the school where their unit will be, where they're living right now. So this proposal that we're coming to you tonight with was described to you in a Friday report on February 10th in quite a bit of detail. It was also noted at the enrollment update presentation of the board, March 14, and then in a follow-up one-page summary of the school capacities and enrollments. We mentioned that the enrollments projected for Lowell and View Ridge were assuming that these boundary changes were in fact approved by the board at this meeting. So we've tried to keep everyone up to date on what's happening. So with that, I'm going to go through a couple of slides. This is the site plan for the northern central part of the district. And you can see the Evergreen Middle School and Cascade High School shown in the red and the yellow locations right here are right adjacent to the old Kmart site, which is where the housing development is going in. There is also an adjacent neighborhood. So this area shown in purple also currently attends Lowell, along with the Kmart site itself. So you can see the Evergreen Middle School goes roughly north-south along that, right next to the housing development. But due north of the housing development is also Beverly Lane, which turns into Dogwood Drive. And I'm pointing out these because I wanted to make sure that you understood where we're proposing that these students go from Lowell Elementary School to View Ridge. Notice that they don't attend Madison, which is the closest school. They also don't attend Emerson Elementary School, which, as the crow flies, is actually the closest school. These, we have quite a few nuances in our boundaries
that were approved at various times by different boundary committees. I'm sorry, approved by the board after the work of various boundary committees. So this is a site plan for the Four Corners housing development. There are 5 major buildings, and this project will be built in 5 phases, opening up in 5 phases, beginning, we understand from the developer, beginning in about mid-September and opening up during the course of the next school year. Officially, their final phase is scheduled to complete in August of the following summer, but they have been accelerating their schedule. So they've been finishing these portions of these projects faster than they had planned. So we fully expect that these 5 units, comprising 430 multifamily homes, will be completed during the next school year. One nuance or kind of a difference about this unit as compared to our typical multifamily development is that this has 85 4- and 5-bedroom units. So when you think about it, those 4- and 5-bedroom units are going to attract fairly good-sized families to those housing developments. We have another experience in a development, I think it was called Gateway Apartments, just south of Silver Lake Elementary School, and it generated 2 or 2.5 times the numbers of students that we thought it was going to generate. So we've used what we learned from that development. We're using that information here. Turns out it was the same builder and same basic building plans here as was used there. That's what I've been told. So this, using the student generation rates that come with those larger units, we're expecting 200 elementary school, 100 middle, and 100 high schools. These are rough numbers. The middle and high schools that these students would attend obviously are Evergreen and Cascade due to their proximity. They do have space for these numbers of students. Lowell does not right now. So on this site plan, what I'm showing you is that those the shaded area indicates that the entire purple area here is being proposed for the move. There are 16, well, in addition to what will eventually be moving into the Four Corners development, are currently 16 K4 students in 13 families. We selected K4 because those would be the students that will be attending elementary school next year. There would also be some kindergartners coming in, but they're not currently students there. So we're showing you that there are 16 students currently living in that area in 13 families. Plus there will be, by our estimates, about 200 more elementary school students living in that Four Corners development. One of the things I thought I would point out is we looked at many solutions for these, for this, including could we divide up that housing development into elementary schools? You could send them to 4 or 5 different elementary schools if it made sense, because one idea is one of the best solutions might be that we try to distribute the load, and that just didn't seem to be workable because you want everyone in that housing development to go to the same school. So we looked very closely at all of the North End elementary schools, and I have 2 slides to show you. This one here is the North End schools. We also have a similar slide for the South End schools, and I'll kind of walk you through that. The area that is shown in the red outline here are View Ridge and Lowell. This chart here shows the proposed enrollment that we expect for next fall, and then permanent building capacities for all those schools. This is arranged in geographical order, so it's from north to south. It's not alphabetical like you're used to seeing probably. The reason we did it this way, I wanted to show you the schools that are closest to Lowell Elementary School that we looked to, obviously, for the first kinds of solutions. Madison and Jackson would be ones that we would that we looked at pretty closely. You probably remember that the capital levy, 2022 capital levy has us tearing down those buildings over the next 5 years or so. Jackson will be before Madison, but about 5 years out, we're going to be in the process. We will have gone through a demolition of those. And that requires that we temporarily house all the students on the site that are attending there. So one of the things we try not to do is to move a lot of students to a school before we go through the process to temporarily move them into portables on the site to tear the building down. You'll notice just based on the far right-hand column, the school that has the most empty seats is Hawthorne Elementary School. That's in the far north end of the school district. In an ideal world, that would be where you would want those students to go, but it didn't seem like it made sense to transport those students that far. So we selected View Ridge as the most likely candidate for the solution, and this is what the enrollment would look like with the proposed change. The only changes between this slide and the previous slide were in the enrollment numbers and the amount over or under capacity for View Ridge and Lowell. Everything else is the same. So I'm going to go back to the first slide and show you that there are 3 schools in green, which indicates that there are 3 schools in the north end that are over their permanent building capacity. With the change, you now have 4, because what you've done is taken View Ridge, which was under its capacity, and you put it over capacity. But Lowell, instead of being, in the first slide, 277 over, you would now be 77 over. So it equalizes the enrollment between those 2 schools. So now I'm going to show you a slide that shows you the south end of the district, and you'll notice that of those remaining schools in the central and southern part of the district, only one of those schools is under its permanent building capacity. So what this does, it illustrates clearly the effect of enrollment at the elementary school increasing in the north end due to these multifamily developments that we had talked about last time. So with the current boundaries, the number of portables needed at Lowell, they have 8 currently. They're getting another 200 students. That's about 24, 25 per portable. So you would get 8 more. So we're in the process of securing drawings and permits to move an additional 8 portables to Lowell next summer. By the end of the summer, if we can. It's likely that we would not be able to move them all on by the end of the summer because that's a lot. So we would move them on as quickly as we could. If we made the boundary adjustment, we would not need any more at Lowell, but we would still need to move probably 3 more or so at View Ridge, because it would put this school over its capacity. View Ridge already has 2. So we think, so in other words, the difference is 8 more at Lowell or 3 more at View Ridge. And you can notice the costs to relocate a portable. Rough number is about $200,000 to relocate an existing portable within the district. So you can see the costs associated with all that. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions, and ultimately what I'd like to do is ask for your consideration to approve the attached boundary adjustment map between Lowell Elementary School and View Ridge Elementary School effective this fall.
Questions? Yes, Director Nichols.
So essentially what I'm seeing here is that the people in that section currently that are currently going to Lowell, they'll be able to stay at Lowell if they apply for the waiver.
Yes.
And so essentially what this is doing is taking that one housing development and just taking all the students, potential students from that housing development, and moving them to a different school.
Right.
Okay. So has there been any talk about doing just that as opposed to changing the entire boundary, just looking at taking that one housing complex as a whole and making that a different, I know you talked about the separate buildings and stuff, but as a whole.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
That would certainly be an option that we could look at. Right now, those students do attend Lowell Elementary School. One of the ideas that we try to maintain in boundaries is to keep neighborhoods at the same elementary school. So realize that what we're proposing does give them the option to stay at the Lowell if they want to,
Right.
but ultimately after those students, those first graders age out in say 4 years or 5 years, all of that neighborhood would be going to View Ridge.
Right. Well, and I'm just thinking, that the whole reason we're doing this is because of this development and the inordinate impact it has.
Yes.
Right. Enrollment wise.
Sure.
Whereas that, you told me you have 16 students there currently.
Yes.
I mean, there's not going to be a 200 person influx in that neighborhood without this development. So why not just take that development itself and
Yes.
do it somewhere else? That's my main question.
Yeah, we could do that. We certainly will do that if that's what you would like. We haven't considered it very much. No.
Any particular reason why it wasn't considered?
No, just the idea that we always try to keep neighborhoods together, and that once you look at that area as a whole, it's like you say, it's really the construction of this new development that is prompting us to request a move.
It seems like a neighborhood all to itself, with 5 buildings as it is. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
I did have one question regarding Madison in the mix there, right in the middle, where you're transporting the kids along Beverly Drive to, like you said, Dogwood to View Ridge, and you're passing by another elementary school.
Yes.
Now, when you said with the boundary adjustments, Madison will still be under 79. The numbers will be under at 79 under
Yeah,
the permanent capacity.
Construction.
Yeah, this boundary change does not affect Madison. And one of the reasons that we aren't proposing that it go to Madison was because it would put us way over during a time when we're heading into a construction project on site.
The concern I have too is when do we estimate that we'll be beginning the construction at Madison?
It's about 4 or 5 years out.
4 or 5 years out.
Yes.
But then we'd be moving kids to one school and potentially another and having that overcrowding.
And
If we put them at Madison now.
Also Madison Elementary School has a very constrained parent drop-off area and bus load, unload area and staff parking area. So if you put another 200 students there along with the buses and cars that will be functioning, having to show up every day on that site in the morning this coming year, then, because those are some of the reasons why we're not proposing it be moved to Madison. After we're done with the construction, we'll have a lot more efficient layout because the plan for the school is that we build a new school back on the playground and redo all the circulation for the vehicles and separate buses from cars. And so when you look out 4 or 5 years, this would be a lot better option, but we didn't think it was a very good option right now.
Right now.
Yes.
Do we anticipate that in 4 or 5 years, we'll probably end up coming back and redoing a boundary change for all the schools in this area?
I think that we continually look at boundaries, and an elementary school boundary adjustment in the north end is very likely in 4 to 5 years. I do. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I really did appreciate the reason why not Madison or Jackson because of that construction. And also I appreciate what Director Nichols just said about those other families.
Yeah.
Because, it could be something with View Ridge being a newer school, not the newest, but there could be some families that they've got kinders that might, if it's the only, might say, yeah, no, this is great because it's a newer school without having much experience at Lowell. So, it'd be interesting to see what those 16 families think, if we've had conversations with them yet. I mean, yes, they have the choice, but maybe they choose to go to View Ridge. I don't know if that's the known.
So we did send a letter to the families living there March 10th, and we gave them contact information for the schools. We wanted to wait until we had this conversation with you before we brought them physically into the building to talk with them, but we're planning to do that.
Okay.
We haven't received any communication from those families.
Okay, of concern about
Correct.
moving or anything.
Right.
And so, I mean, it could just be that they just haven't responded yet. But the other thing, I think this could be an opportunity, though, for those parents at View Ridge, Madison, Emerson, Lowell, everybody, if there is sort of an FAQ, sort of about how those decisions were made, especially because of the construction, the portables, because I'm also thinking that level of portables would have to go to Lowell. At how many portables do we have to put in a bathroom portable? And I'm thinking 16, we're now talking 17, 18, because we've got to put in bathroom portables like we did at Woodside. And so that just, then that chews up our cost and all of that too.
Yeah, and also Snohomish County and City of Everett limit the maximum size of a group of buildings before you have to start building fire resistive construction between these collections. And I think it's 5 or 6 1,000 square feet, which is about 5 or 6 portables. And then you have to separate them by a certain distance. And so you end up getting a lot of construction of portables out on the playfield.
Yeah,
as well,
and that's,
where you'll get that.
but that's why I just wondered the opportunities for an FAQ of how some of these decisions are made, because, parents from View Ridge might be wondering, neighbors might be wondering why a bus is driving up Beverly past Madison. Why aren't they going south to, I'm just how do we
Sure,
eliminate
right.
some of those neighborhood questions that come up? But then it would also be really interesting to see, I appreciate changing this boundary tonight, just to include that whole thing potentially, but also having those conversations with those 16 families or kiddos, kids' parents, just to see where are they leaning. Because
Yes.
the burden could be minor, or it could be just, let's just do the apartments. We can always come back and adjust this, and again, for those 16 families if we needed to or
Right.
something.
And the big push right now is that the speed that these units are being built and opened up.
Well, I think that's our
Yes.
pressing thing, is getting
Yes.
that apartments over, but then the families might not be as pressing.
Thank you.
Director Herman, you had a question?
Well, and it was just the appreciation and that the families that are currently at their school, they are not being affected. If they have a younger sibling, I'm guessing if they chose to, they could probably also receive the variance to stay with their older sibling. Is that a priority? Because it's such a small number.
I know.
And so this presentation, though, really helped lay it out, almost a process of elimination of where it makes sense, and that we are not asking current families, we are not forcing a change of any current families. It's about new families coming in, and boy, this has happened fast, but it's also probably, I shouldn't be saying, it may not be 200 students at the end of August showing up on the doorstep. It probably is going to be a little bit of a throughout the year.
Yeah, right. And I think I mentioned, I can review it again. The first unit we expect to be opened up about mid-September.
Yeah.
And then the other 4 will come online during the course of the year. So by the end of the school year, we expect all of them should be up and occupied.
By the end of September?
No, end of the year.
End of the year, okay.
End of next 2024.
Yeah, so the first unit, the first phase of 5 is supposed to open up this coming September, about mid-September. And then every couple months from then, for the next 12 months or so, those 4 other phases will come online. The final phase officially is scheduled to come online August of the following summer of 2024. So but we have been seeing them finish their construction earlier than they had planned. They're going really fast and they're finishing things ahead of schedule. We expect that all 5 of these phases will be completed and occupied sometime during the coming school year, beginning in September.
It's going to be a rolling throughout the year for the school, just rolling incoming students.
Director Mason, you have a question?
Yeah, I think one thing that hasn't been addressed or focused on is the families that are currently at View Ridge. So we're talking about the 16 families that potentially would be moved and can actually stay at their school, but we haven't addressed the 457 students that are currently at View Ridge and the fact that their student body is going to increase 38% with 200 new students, and that they're taking the burden of new students coming in throughout the year, the entire year, for maybe a year, year and a half. To me, that doesn't make sense at all, to burden one school with 200 students kind of overnight. And I'm wondering, I think it does make sense not to send them to Lowell, given the numbers there. And I understand the challenges with Madison and preparing for a remodel. But I think it needs to be addressed more equitably between some of these schools. So for example, what was it considered of moving some of Madison's students south so that the individuals in this little area could go to Madison? Is that an option considered?
We did not anticipate what I would call a regional boundary adjustment because by rights, one of the most logical solutions is to put 200 students at Hawthorne Elementary. And what you could do to get there is you could do a domino process, kind of like we did with the high school boundary adjustments, where we moved students from Jackson to Cascade and then from Cascade to Everett. We could do the same thing with elementary schools, but it would probably take 6 to 9 months to go through the process. And it would end up pushing students northward at Hawthorne Elementary School.
And isn't there a rather large construction project near Hawthorne going in after they?
Yep.
So that doesn't make sense, because I'm guessing that's going to produce a number of students that will end up going to Hawthorne.
Yes, and that I think is a 10-year build out for that development.
Okay, so it'll happen more slowly.
Yeah, so we went over at the last presentation, board meeting, we went over those 4 housing developments, the multifamily construction going on in the north end of Everett. So that's one of the reasons why we would suggest that we hold off for a couple of years before seeing where the enrollment actually lands based on these developments, before doing a regional boundary adjustment for the elementary schools.
I think one other thing that hasn't been addressed, and it wasn't a part of your presentation, is you look at permanent building capacity, but the schools that are in consideration, View Ridge, Madison, Lowell, all have different capacities because they already have portables on them or using. So for example, Madison has a capacity of 475 students, and they're currently 372. So they're currently 100 students below their all capacity. I don't know what you call it, total capacity.
Yes.
So, so I just can't help but think 100 students there and 100 students at View Ridge makes more sense than putting 200 students at a school. I mean, that is a huge impact to one school, and I don't think that there's been very good engagement with the parents at View Ridge, based on a couple emails we got today. But I'm just wondering, who was the committee that came up with the proposal? Because in the past we've done, a more robust planning process, and have has anyone reached out to any of the families at View Ridge to discuss the impacts?
No one has formally reached out to the families that are currently attending View Ridge. The principal has sent the copy of the letter that went to the families that are actually would be moving or given the opportunity to move, and then also provided a copy of that letter to the staff at the school. So that, as I said, started off, I think March 10 was the letter date.
Is it possible that we can do, I mean, we saw how communication has an opportunity with surveys and it has used surveys as opportunities to get information. Is it possible that we could survey the parents and staff at View Ridge to find out some information as far as the receipt of 200, a possibility of 200 students overnight, essentially?
But it's not really overnight.
It's over the course of
over the course of a
school year.
And a lot of our schools, this has happened for the past 15 years. Silver Lake took on that apartment complex. Penny Creek took on what's across the street. My whole neighborhood had to get put into a school. My whole neighborhood is now at Cascade. I just think the unknown is, I think the unknown is giving some people angst, but we've done this before.
And if you look at this slide up on the screen there, one of the reasons I included that is it shows you that 4 of the schools in the South End are further over their permanent building capacity than View Ridge will be with this proposed boundary change.
I think it's, sorry, good.
I'll also respond to the question, what committee, it was internal staff that developed this. When the high school boundaries were developed, it was a lot larger regional change, and the board directed the superintendent to form a committee to come up with a recommendation and bring that recommendation back to the school board for consideration. That process probably took 9 to 12 months just to get a recommendation out after the extensive community engagement that process takes.
And it is a neighborhood move that we've done before too.
Yes.
Without full community engagement, because it is a neighborhood. Talking to the parents that live there, I don't know if surveying the parents that are coming, because they don't know what it looks like, but Silver Lake knows what it looks like, Penny Creek knows, Mill Creek, I mean, all of our South End schools know what hundreds of kids look like over the course of a year or two. But not September 1st, not October 1st.
I would also point out that we don't know who's moving into this complex, right? So a lot of these kids could be at other schools already in the district and may want to stay there. You know, there's so many variables to this that, yes, it's a lot for View Ridge, but I think if we are intentional and maybe scale down the boundary change just to that apartment complex, and with the stepped approach that's going to be coming with the buildings openings and move-ins, I think it's not going to be as sudden an impact as it seems on paper.
I did have a question. You mentioned something. If kids that are currently in the district move into this complex and they happen to be at Woodside or wherever, can they still receive, or would, if they wish to continue to stay at Woodside, would they immediately be offered a variance in order to go to Woodside and stay there? I mean, if they provide their own transportation, if they, you know.
So I would direct you to the chart up here. The practice that we have is that if a school is over its permanent building capacity, we tend to deny those transfer requests unless there are special circumstances. And I should probably stop talking because I'm not even in charge of running that program. But that's generally, I would say, probably not to the schools that are over capacity.
I don't think our standard is parents move, you get to stay at the same school.
No, but if they happen to currently be part of that 92 over, you know, if they happen to currently attend that school, and yet now they've been offered a place in Four Corners to live, and they were doubling up with grandma, grandpa, and whatever else. And so now they want their own place to
Oh, I
live at.
understand. They don't want to
So,
move.
so if they were
Yeah.
KIT students, I believe they would be able to remain at the school that they were in already. Yes, that would.
That is correct. Mike, if I could just point out privilege, okay. A lot of questions tonight from the board, really good questions on this. Your internal staff, I believe, is Darcy, and your team is your internal staff, correct?
Yes.
To share to the public and to the board. Listening to the board, is there any way that the options that you have tonight with even the 100 students in Madison or variances that you could bring back to the board, as well as working with the regional office of that school to give some options to the board as they understand, even like how many kids do we project going to View Ridge, like I believe Director Nichols said, or 100 kids in Madison? Does that alleviate some things? Is there any way you could bring back anything to the board at the next meeting?
Yes.
With some options to look at in a clearer picture. So we get that, because great discussion tonight. But I think there's some issues still that we could work with the community as well as working with the board to see what I heard tonight, different ideas and different options, just so the board gets that full picture.
Certainly.
With options,
Absolutely,
if that's
we can.
possible. By your internal team is your facility team and construction team. Am I accurate with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think that will help us move on to the next part of the
If the board's
presentation
okay with
tonight.
that, I'm going to turn over to the chair. And
Directors?
Yeah, is there time constraints to this that you're worried
Good
about
question.
that we need
Good
to?
Yes.
Yeah. What are those?
Right now, it's going to be extremely difficult to move the portables onto Lowell in the quantity that we would need to if there was not a relief through a boundary change or something. So we are in the process of moving as quickly as we can with architectural services to design and get in for permits on 8 additional portables for Lowell Elementary School. Whatever schools we put them at, if they need portables, we have to ramp up that process as well. I can tell you that it can take 6 to 9 months to get those permits and actually do the work. That's why we start the process like in January and February for the coming September. We're already right on the edge in terms of that. So we're proceeding with getting the permits for the portables at View Ridge if needed, if this boundary change is approved, or at Lowell if there's no change. What we haven't looked at is how many more portables we might need for any of the other schools in the north end, and we haven't even started the permitting process for that. So those are my concerns.
What is the number of anticipated portables to be added to View Ridge?
3.
With
With the boundary change, it would be 3.
Okay,
Without the
but
boundary
average.
change, none. Without the boundary change, Lowell will need 8 more.
8 more.
To the 8 they already have.
And how many are at View Ridge right now?
2.
And so we won't
Yes, 2.
meet again for another month because
Right.
of spring
The end
break.
of,
So that
April.
puts you even more behind.
Yes.
So I wonder if, because you said again before, in the past, it's gone on the consent agenda. If there are Friday reports, we've got a couple of special meetings in that, in the meantime, maybe there is an opportunity for more discussion, more information, that it doesn't have to go all the way to the next board meeting, or unless it does,
It would,
The next consent.
it would take a board action to
an action,
approve.
but we've done those before at a special meeting just recently. So I wonder what the opportunities are given the time constraint, but you wanted to speak.
Well, I was just going to point out that the going from 2 to 5 portables, that is both the least cost and the least impactful. I'm not sure where other board members stand, but I would almost want to rule out Lowell, given the numbers, as an option. And so I'm not even sure if that's something.
I agree.
But I don't want you going down a path that we're already considering ruling out. I'm not sure where that leaves us tonight if directors want more time to consider this.
I would be willing to say that we don't want to leave them at Lowell, only because that 8 more portables on the campus would be rather difficult to accommodate on
Right,
the
and
existing campus.
that was our view as well. We just didn't want to presume that, because ultimately the board decides what the boundaries are, and we didn't want to presume that you would make a
Presume it.
change. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that. We thought it was unlikely as well.
I would agree with that. And directors, would you still want further information? But also agree on the fact that we probably don't want to put any more portables on the campus at Lowell?
Agree about Lowell.
I think you have a general consensus here of that. But we would like to see further information regarding the alternative options that may be available.
And as I understand it, you would like options, plural?
Plural.
We can certainly,
And I think a little in community engagement of maybe like maybe not a survey, but, you know, the leadership of View Ridge having a, you know, staff opinion, you know, what are they ready for and what do they know, and parent engagement.
PTA.
We might,
even.
so a couple of things that I would draw your attention back to is the time limit that Mike and his team are under. And then just because we approve some version of this tonight doesn't mean we can't in the future make an adjustment that's reasonable. So what I would propose is what I'm comfortable with is amending the language so that students that that come from that specific apartment complex would go to View Ridge at this point. And then we can look at expanding that boundary change later, or, you know, whatever the case may be, but at least now it gives Mike and his team somewhere to go from here. And he doesn't have to wait another month for us to make up our mind.
I like that change.
would that also leave the 16 families at Lowell?
At Lowell.
Yes, the current families.
Yeah.
16 students.
I would assume that they were gonna stay there anyways. At least that's my assumption.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's an outcry from the 16 students and their families that they want to go to View Ridge, then, you know, maybe that's something we can look at.
Full numbers.
Yeah.
Either way.
But
I need a consensus from everybody.
we need to make a vote.
It would be nice to have a motion, so that way we can have a true vote.
Yeah, because
An
I'll
approval.
move that with the current so I will make a motion that the new Four Corners apartment complex, that boundary line be moved to attend View Ridge.
But that's the current recommendation.
No, not the 16. Without
Oh,
the,
okay,
not
gotcha.
Just the
not
Four Corners
Specific.
housing
Corners
development.
Specific,
Yes.
development.
I don't understand that. I need more clarification. Are you dividing that small area into two different?
Yes.
Yeah, because of the question about those families and do we need it? Or do we? Or do
You're
we
saying
keep it as it is?
that just that doesn't make sense to me at all.
I would like to just, I think what we can walk away from tonight is the agreement that the portables not be placed at Lowell Elementary, the additional 8 ones, and that we need further options as to how we're going to move Four Corners neighborhood into the schools that are there in the region. The 16 students, they're grandfathered, and they go where they are currently at Lowell. They can remain at Lowell. But we still need options.
But I don't know,
for
I'm
the
wondering
16 other.
options. I mean, I heard the 100 going to Madison and the 100 going to View Ridge, but then we've got 2 buses coming in at this, you know, the same time.
Then you would be, if you take the Four Corners 5 buildings, 200 elementary school kids, and divide it up, you will have a scenario where in the same parking lot, you know, you would have
Not
maybe
5 buses, you'd have 2, because you'd have the View Ridge and a,
well, you would
in
have
Madison.
200 students coming from those. So
Yeah.
that would probably be,
Oh, filling a bus.
yeah.
5 buses.
You would fill up, I don't know, 4 or 5 buses.
4 or 5
And,
buses.
What about it doesn't make sense for you?
So that's why it
Well-
kind of didn't make sense to try to divide up the,
I guess I'm frustrated that there wasn't conversation around this earlier, and that it sounds like the decision has sort of been made and was presented to the board based on that. I would have liked to have seen a boundary change in the Madison area where some of those kids go to View Ridge, and then not dividing up that little purple,
area, and it's just
I don't know
sending
that
it
shape. I don't know the
across to-
correct name for that
It's
shape.
A rhombus?
I don't know. But, to me, it doesn't make sense to divide a housing development into 2 different schools.
Yeah.
And really, that's such a small area, and you're talking about 16 families or students, that makes no sense to divide them up, because it's really a really small impact on whatever school, wherever they end up. So to me, it was just about really, there's only one other option, I think, and that was whether you move some of Madison's area into View Ridge and then bring all those students into the Madison, continue the light blue all the way down. It makes for a very geographically awkward boundary when you have a school way north and then a chunk that's going to start attending there. To me, doesn't make sense.
Gotcha.
Well, I think Mike's point earlier was that it's already tight there, right? They are at Madison. It's already tight there. Logistically, from a transportation perspective, getting in and out of the school in a timely fashion is a challenge at this point. And then you add construction in 4 years, and it becomes that much more impacted. But I agree with you. I think that should all be light blue, right? And I think we can get there eventually. But in the meantime, we still have to deal with these 200 students.
Right.
Potential
But
students.
don't forget that Madison has a permanent capacity of 475.
Right.
And they're 100 under right now.
There's 79 under right now.
No,
Yes, look at it.
it says
with
current
permanent,
372
but with-
versus
That's your notes, but that's not correct. It's 451 to 372.
that's permanent building capacity, not
Right.
not the total capacity of the school. It's different. And that's one of the things that wasn't talked about.
Because you're including portables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we
But
house students
that's-
in all the other portables
You
and
have
talk
to
about
include
them.
portables. I would propose that we table this discussion for the next meeting, and that we continue to focus in on the fact that, yes, you heard consensus that you would not put 8 additional portables at Lowell. Is that?
Doesn't solve anything, though.
Yeah.
because then we still,
Table the discussion for further, we table this until.
But he still has to make plans based on.
To get portables to another school.
Do you have the question? Do you have the capabilities to give any options for next month with time or anything with any restraints to the board? Just to clarify, because you've.
I can certainly do that. We all have to look closer and make some more assumptions about when those units will come online at Four Corners. They won't all be online for the beginning of school.
September, yeah.
But they're building them really fast. So we would have to look at that and talk to our architects, and we can always come up with options.
My question for the board and for the public, Mike, from the apartment complex, we know that some kids are coming mid-September. Is there any timeline from like November, how many more kids would come and so forth? I think that'd be important for the board to hear as well.
Yeah, and I can provide that to you in a follow-up form.
Okay.
As I said, the official schedule we have right now, they're continuing to accelerate that. And so that's what we would expect to continue. But we can certainly provide that information to you, and along with we can flush out some other options that have been discussed tonight, if that's what you would like.
I just don't know, I just fail to see options because of, yes, Madison, if their construction's not for 5 years, but when looking at that, I know we're trying to get the conversation down, but it's sort of like the schools that are closest, the homes that are closest to Cascade are also closest to Jackson. So looking at that Madison boundary, I mean, Madison's almost at the top of their boundary. Yes, there's some stuff off to the west, but it's sort of, you know, what neighborhoods would you move from Madison to go to View Ridge so that you could take up to Madison? It would sort of be the furthest from Madison. You know, but I'm rambling. If Madison can't handle all those buses, can they handle, and we don't want to divide up that complex, you know, could they handle half the buses, but we don't want to divide up the complex. And I think that's where, what are the options if we want to keep them together?
And
That's
then you,
simple is, because we're looking for fast and simple, is just send them to View Ridge. They'll come in over time. We engage that staff that they're coming, not that they might come, but that they're coming. And then 5 years from now or whatever, when we have these 2 new schools done, then there is a massive boundary change. And we realign everything because they're coming. Hawthorne's going to be coming.
and that's essentially the path that we had seen and were planning to follow.
Okay.
Yes.
I think tonight we do have urgency because of construction, bidding, all that kind of, I mean, the permitting. And I think we.
So am I hearing that you want to go ahead and vote on the recommendation that's proposed?
I think you proposed an amendment to that.
But then
didn't you?
I reheard, nobody seconded it, so it's not out there really. I mean, it's out there, but it wasn't seconded. So I don't even know if I have to modify it.
So the motion is to approve the recommendation with the modification that the boundary change is limited to the housing complex itself.
Is that the motion?
That was my motion.
Is there a second to the motion?
Am I making the motion or is she making the motion? Okay,
just
so
made
I'll
the
second
motion.
it.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved that we,
So I just need clarification. Sorry, I know there's discussion, so I'll wait.
it's been moved that we approve a plan to allow for the Four Corners development to go to View Ridge, and that the 16 families or
That's not the
whoever's
motion. That's
current.
not the motion. Oh, you're making comment. I'm sorry.
No, she's
Apologize.
reiterating the motion.
Yeah. The motion
That
had
is the
nothing-
motion.
That is the motion.
That is the motion.
Yeah, thank
That
you.
the 16 families be allowed to attend the current school, their current school, Lowell Elementary School. It's been moved and seconded. We're open for the discussion.
I need clarity. I don't understand. Is that whole purple area going to View Ridge with the idea that the students that are currently there allowed to get a variance to Lowell? So does that purple area become?
Not the purple area
Pink?
itself, just the actual housing complex.
So you're dividing that little area into two?
For now.
For now.
For a limited amount of time.
Yeah, so that he can get permits and things. But then too, if they're gonna get a variance and they all 10 say,
It
we're
makes no
fine with
sense.
staying with Lowell, that 5 years from now, if they've aged out of Lowell and we've got those 2 new schools, then we do then we do that big variance change. And if they choose to go to View Ridge, then maybe we do just add them in, but we haven't heard from them. So.
If, here's the what if. What if more families move into that area that are in homes that are in that area, but currently aren't occupied by students, move into that area and they're not in Four Corners? What school do they go to?
You're gonna go to Lowell.
They would stay at Lowell
They stay at
unless
Lowell.
you modify the boundaries through this process.
So now you're running buses from that corner all the way down to Lowell, and you're running buses from that corner all the way to View Ridge
But
rather
we
than
do
just
that
one?
anyways for our choice programs.
And that would be evident, that would be true for the next 5 years if we gave those students, current students in that area, the choice to remain at Lowell with transportation, which is what the proposal was.
But then
I
you
have
know,
a
if you-
concern with having a development that's attached to just one neighborhood and, one school and the neighborhood around them
Right.
not.
We do neighborhood schools.
We do neighborhoods,
Not building developments.
not
So
developments.
So then
yeah.
what we need to do now, if that's how people feel, is we have to vote on the motion, right? If that motion fails,
Can we
then
amend
then a new motion can be made.
Okay, that's, you can't,
You can't amend it.
you can, yeah, you can amend it, but okay, so are there any further discussions?
Can I amend my motion?
Wait a minute, are there any discussions? Student reps, do you have any discussions on this motion? We're going to engage our students because they're closer to the picture than we are. Okay, hearing no further discussions, all those, and you can't, I'm sorry, student reps, you can't vote on it.
I thought, was there an option for amendment?
Well, you have to vote on the amendment,
Someone
you
needs
have
to
vote
propose.
on the motion, and then if it does not pass, you amend the motion.
So
All
the-
those in favor of the current motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
No. The motion does not carry. So is there any further amendments to the motion that existent?
Can I just make a new motion? Because it failed.
Yeah.
It's just a new motion.
It's a new motion because it failed, so I will
Did
make,
that correctly.
I will make the current motion be the question asked. With the
Original.
The original question asked.
Recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, the original recommendation. Okay.
So
it's been a motion has
Second.
been made that the board of directors approves the attendance boundary adjustments between Lowell Elementary and View Ridge Elementary effective the fall of 2023 as shown on the attached fall 2023 elementary boundary adjustment. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Minstrel and seconded by Director Nichols that we approve of the recommended action. Any discussion? Hearing no discussions, all those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
No. Raise your hands for those that say aye. We'll go around for a voice. Okay, it passes because of a majority. Director Mitchell, Director Herman, and Director Nichols approve the motion. So the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's more suspense than you're bargaining for, huh?
True engagement on this issue. All right, so now I will provide you an update on the high school boundary adjustments. So in 2018, the board approved new elementary school boundaries necessitated by the opening of Tambar Creek Elementary School. And it affected mostly the elementary schools in the whole southern half of the district. At about the same time, the board directed the superintendent to form a high school growth mitigation planning committee, a long name for a boundary committee, which prepared a boundary change recommendation to reduce enrollment at Jackson High School. That was the directive the board gave to the superintendent, is that form a committee and with the stated intent of reducing enrollment at Jackson High School. So along the way, it made some changes to Cascade and Everett High School's enrollment projections as well, and boundaries. So the board approved this recommendation in 2019 for implementation beginning in fall of 2020, four-year implementation process. We are in the third of 4 years. So right now, this coming year, the coming school year, all of the grade levels in the areas that were moved will attend the new school. So we're in the third or fourth year of the implementation. So tonight I'm going to update you on briefly the boundary change process and the effects of this on our enrollments and portables at our 3 full-sized comprehensive high schools. So as I said, superintendent, at the direction of the board, formed a planning committee. And this is what prompted that. This scenario that you see up on the screen right here. This was before COVID, and that's really important because COVID made a lot of changes to a lot of things, and it affected the enrollments at those schools as well. But before COVID, this is what we thought was going to happen if there were no boundary changes. Jackson High School was going to continue to increase by 225. It was already way over capacity. Cascade was going to increase by about 189. It was already just about at capacity. Everett High School had a lot of capacity at this time. So that was the scenario. At that time, before we knew about COVID, we were projecting the high school enrollment would grow by about 565 students from 2019 to 2023. Okay, so that's kind of the scenario that we were heading into. In March 2019, the board approved the Boundary High School Growth Mitigation Planning Committee's recommendation, and this is what we projected would result from that. And this was using projections from Les Kendrick with, again, this is all pre-COVID, so got to remember that. This is what we projected would happen with the boundary change. Jackson High School's enrollment between 2019 and 2023 was going to decrease by 186. Cascade was going to increase by 207. Everett High was going to increase by 544. So keep that in mind. We'll come back to that a couple of other times. As I said, this being implemented over 4 years. So this slide here shows that in 2020 and 2021, COVID-19 impacted our schools, significantly slowed down the growth at the high school as well as other grade levels. So based on everything we know, and we're through COVID now, and we've seen enrollments somewhat stabilize. High schools are actually continuing to grow, but just not nearly as fast. And we all everyone in probably the nation took a really significant drop in enrollment. So with that, all of that, based on what we know now and what we now project for what will happen next fall, this is what we think will happen. Jackson High School will decrease by 112 from 2019 to 2023. Cascade will increase by about 30, so just about even. Everett High will increase 238. So I'm going to show you on one slide those three scenarios. First one, what we projected would happen if we didn't make a change. In the middle of the slide, what we projected would happen with the change in boundaries. And then at the bottom, what we actually now project will happen. So I'm going to point out the similarities between what we projected would happen with the boundary change in the middle of the slide and what ended up happening. We got the effect that we were looking for, we just didn't get the magnitude. That's the simple story. And COVID, something we could not have predicted, came in and changed our world like it changed so many others. So that's the big high level picture. One more way to look at this is portables. These are the three high schools, portables on site in the second column. Third column is what we thought was going to be needed if we didn't make any boundary change. Jackson is going to go from 17 up to 27. Cascade was going to go from 0 to 7, and Everett was going to stay below capacity. We thought with the boundary changes, again, before COVID, Jackson was going to only need 10, so it's going to go from 17 down to 10. Cascade was going to stay at 7, and Everett High was going to need 0. I think at the time I said maybe 1 or 2 because they're going to get really right at capacity. Here's what we think now is that Jackson High School, this coming fall, based on the projected enrollments, they will need 14. I think they have 15 right there right now. So they were up 17. We've already taken a few away. They continue to have program needs for some of those portables. Cascade is expected to be at 2, and Everett High is still at 0. So if you look at the total portable count and compare the 17 to 16, we're really close in terms of the total need for portables. And we're certainly, we're about half of what we thought we were going to be. Because we thought we were going to be at 34 before COVID, now we're at 16.
Can I ask
So-
a question about the portables though? Cascade used to have a bunch of portables, but did they all get torn down because they're so old? So
Yes.
now they only have two?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we had those there when we, I remember when we did modernization of the couple of the buildings there and left those portables out in the back for quite a while. Okay, so questions, if you have any?
That was my.
Any questions? Student reps, directors?
I do appreciate this information because, especially the main goal was to take the weight off of Jackson, not add it to Cascade, but give some to Everett where there was room. So just moving the 3 up. And as I talk to Gateway families, it is those kids now, it's just, I'm going to Cascade. And there's not a, I wish I was going to Jackson, which everybody feared.
Yeah.
It was just, I asked what school, Jackson or Cascade, and it's like, yay, I get to go to Cascade, that should be a yay, right?
Excellent. Thank you so
Thank you.
very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Gunn. Great discussion. Now, we're still in new business section. We will now go to section 14.02, which is approval of the 2023-24 board travel.
President Lassane, I would move that this item be postponed until next meeting, since we are running over time.
You would postpone that this item be moved to next week, tabled until
No, it would be postponed until next meeting. That's my motion.
next meeting. We can table this item until next meeting. Director Mason, you have a question?
No, someone needs to second it if they want to.
Second.
It's been moved that item 14.02 be moved to the next board meeting,
Next regular meeting, yes.
next regular meeting by Director Nichols and seconded by Director Andrews. All those in favor of the motion? Oh, before I go.
Mitchell,
Is there?
Director Mitchell.
Mitchell, sorry, not Mason. Is there any discussion?
There can be no discussion on a motion to postpone and no amendments.
Sorry. It's Robert's Rules of Order. There's no discussion on this moving an agenda item.
This motion.
Okay. All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
The ayes pass. This will be moved to the next meeting. We'll now move to item 14.03, which is first reading of policy 2409. And what we'll do is just have Mr. Flecken sign at the podium until he's complete.
Thank you. Well, good evening. For the first policy for your consideration tonight is policy 2409, granting equivalency credit. The proposed revisions remove language that is no longer current or in practice within the district and has been amended as such for your approval.
Are there any discussions? If we can, by general consent, just move this to second reading. Thank you.
Next, we have policy 2410, high school graduation requirements. The proposed revisions include the addition of language regarding the graduation requirements emergency waiver, also known as GRU. In July 2021, the State Board of Education passed permanent rules allowing districts to offer waivers of certain graduation requirements on an individual student basis during certain emergencies, including the current COVID-19 public health crisis. Revisions update the policy to update the graduation pathway requirements for students in the classes of 2022 through 2023, as described in Chapter 180, 111, Washington Administrative Code, pardon me. Revisions also update graduation requirements through the class of 2027 and removes language that is no longer current in state law.
Are there any further discussions?
I have a question.
Yes, question?
I did ask previously, I think you know, about the PE requirement, and apparently that's been a change in law recently. Are there any options for high school students that are involved in extracurricular sports that have, I mean, these are often students that are trying to take full academic loads and then they're playing sports after school and they're involved in clubs. Is there any opportunity to relieve that aspect, or how? I wasn't entirely sure how that played out given the new law.
So the law changed it, so there's no longer a PE waiver. It does allow for the activity to be excused. And so what would happen in the circumstance that you're talking about is that a student could be excused from an activity. That could be one way that happens. But then the student would need to complete competency-based credit based on PE knowledge, like about muscle groups, breathing, health, aspects of physical education. And so we have competency-based materials that students work through. There's assessments through the state that a student could complete as an alternative. So that's one way that it happens. If a student doesn't need to be excused from the activity-based, they could also engage in competency-based credit that involves activity. And we have PE teachers at each school that monitor that. So if a student's participating in athletics, they may run, walk, be involved in the activity. They document that as well as engage in the knowledge base. That's part of the competency-based packet as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
Please clarify once more for me that physical education is being removed from the graduation requirements?
No, actually, what happened, and the reason why there's no longer a PE waiver is that PE is a core requirement for graduation.
Okay, there's no waiver.
In past years, many years now, it was treated as an elective and oftentimes could be waived or treated very differently, but that changed with the 24 credit requirement.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And there will be a policy adjustment coming forward to the board for your approval. Also, as Dr. Willard said, there is a competency part of that PE. Even though you can excuse the physical activity, the competency part will be required to get the credit for the PE. So what we're looking at is to level the playing field and make it one procedure across the district so that all students, when they do have the waive, meet the same requirement.
And one last further clarification, the waiver can be, not the waiver, excuse me, the competency-based learning and testing can be done outside of school hours. So it would not have to be technically taking a class period, I guess, is what I'm asking.
What we're providing now will be used through Performance Matters. We work with Dr. Matthews on providing an assessment. Right now, what we're looking at is a 10-question assessment that covers all the areas that were mentioned by Dr. Willard. So,
but waiving the activity means that they don't physically have to be enrolled in a physical education class. They can do that outside of that. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Student reps, do you have any questions or comments regarding PE or not being able to waive it? We'll move this on to second reading. Thank you very much.
Next, we have policy 2416, high school equivalency certificate. This proposed new policy reflects current regulations regarding eligibility requirements for individuals to take the high school equivalency test found in Washington Administrative Code 131-48100, and provides clarification that the application and decision process for determining whether an individual has substantial and warranted reason for leaving the regular high school program has been found as prescribed in law. Specifically here, what I would like to point out to the board is this is just not an easy, I don't want to complete or participate in high school and now I get this alternative. It is actually much more significant than that to be granted high school equivalency certificate based on extenuating life circumstances.
Any further discussion? Any questions, comments? I do have one comment to make. On page 2, item A, We have to correct, there's a typo in students. There's no T. And so,
I apologize for the spelling error. I will get that corrected before second read.
thank you. We'll move this on to second reading.
Real quick, I thought of a question like after you asked us about the physical education stuff.
Okay?
I've heard people talk about trying to waive PE because they do a lot of sports. Has that not been announced to students that they can no longer waive it if they take a sport? Like I had a friend who did sports all year long. Like she was constantly doing stuff, so she was able to waive that kind of stuff. Was that ever announced to students?
The policy now.
Yeah, we're updating our policy, so that's part of it. But what would have happened if you had a friend or if you needed something that would have been considered a waiver in the past is that your counselor would work with you and make sure that you receive the competency-based credit. And if it is that the activity portion needed to be excused, they would actually handle most of the pieces that would allow the student to access that. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot of systems so that it's more seamless. Even though announcing it is good, it will be in the high school course catalog also, which is often how we describe impacts to how students take courses. And now it'll be in the policy, which will catch up with the state as well.
Thank you for the clarification.
I can also speak as a parent. My parent expertise is that if your student is looking at the option in the past of waiving PE, they always had to get it approved prior to this beginning of the semester. They had to fill out paperwork, they had to get things signed, and then they had to do it throughout the semester. So it wasn't kind of at the end of the school year, I thought I was going to waive PE kind of thing. It was always, and I think most students knew that up front, that because of counselors and such.
Yep, and in a way, it's identical to that.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? We can move this then to second reading.
Next, we have policy 3230, student privacy. The proposed revisions update, clarify, and reorganize the language within the policy itself. In addition, the revisions include changing the title from student privacy to searches of students and student privacy.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move this to second reading.
Next, we have policy 3231, searches of students and their property. Proposed revisions update, clarify, and reorganize the language. The revisions also provide detailed information about conducting searches into the related procedure.
Any further questions on this?
How is this different from the previous policy?
You have one as a procedure and one as the policy.
This is not, we don't approve.
Director
These are
Nichols.
both policies.
Yeah, we don't approve.
Director Nichols, to address your question directly.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
The deleted language that you see there is more procedural in nature. It's not a policy, those aren't policy statements. So they've been moved to the procedure and with updates on the grounds for and conducting for a search.
So if we have searches of students and their property in policy 3220 and then policy 3231, why not just get rid of this policy altogether and move everything to 3230?
One of the reasons is because the related procedure to it is very specific to the conduction of a search by administrative staff on campus. So we try to separate that from other language.
Another one, it looks like all the search stuff was deleted.
Right.
Yeah.
That now exists in the procedure.
Yeah.
No, it's just,
It looks like they cleaned up both of them.
I would also, Director Nichols, if I may go back to the previous policy and point something out.
Yeah.
Most of the policy language that is embedded within 3230 is specific to students' personal privacy as it relates to their records. And as you can see, there are references to their ages as when they become legal adults and what sort of privacies are afforded to them under the law around their own personal privacy as they age through the K-12 system.
So again, if that's the intent of that policy, why reference their personal property and searches of it in the same policy. It just seems redundant and not necessary. So either we need to take these two policies and completely separate them, or it just doesn't make sense that we have to talk about searches of students and personal property in 3130 or 3230 and then talk about it again in more detail in 3231. It's like an over bureaucratization of something that should be pretty straightforward. Am I crazy? Am I not making sense here?
Is it basically personal property versus records?
If you would like,
and the differences?
we do base our revisions on WAS's model policies. If you would like us to personalize it to Everett Public Schools and bring revisions to both, or to see how we can revise them to the next board meeting, we're happy to do so.
I would just like some common sense to come into this at some point, because we're talking about the same thing twice in two different policies. It's a little ridiculous.
Dr. Fleckenstein,
Not a doctor.
Mr. Fleckenstein, I have a question. Is it pretty much basically a difference between personal property and records of students? Is that the difference?
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing from the board, to be clear, is both are related to the personal rights of students, right? One involves their property, and part of that right to privacy is also through their records. I'm hearing that you would like us to go back and revise the two to be more distinct and clear, and I'm happy to do that for you and bring it to the next board meeting for first read.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
For the board's consideration, next we have 3421, child abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Proposed revisions include legal definitions of the terms for child abuse and neglect that have been updated in the law. Language has been added regarding community education programs to comply with RCW 28A 620.010 and RCW 28A 620.020. The revisions also include changing the title from child abuse, neglect, and exploitation to child abuse and neglect. Specifically, the two RCWs that I referenced, one is actually the definition update within the law. The second is for the board's consideration. It is not a legal mandate around the proposed community education programs if you read the RCW. So it's for your consideration. Should we run those programs within the district?
Any further questions or concerns, comments? We'll move this on to second reading.
Thank you. Next, we have policy 5350, holidays. Proposed revisions align with House Bill 1617, aligning state and school holidays. Juneteenth became a legal holiday on July 1st, 2022. As a result, it has now been added to the list of legal school holidays in board policy.
I have one question. New Year's Eve day was usually during the winter break, and I notice it's crossed out this time. Is that because it is normally during, and it's no longer a holiday, considered a holiday?
I can have Dr. Golden come and give an explanation for that.
Yeah, we have several staff that follow a school calendar, so it's not part of their work year. This is also not a state school holiday. We had three different, the day before Christmas, day after Christmas, and New Year's Eve day. And of those non-school state school holidays, the New Year's Eve day made more sense than eliminating a day before, day after Christmas.
So that we can have equal number of holidays.
Yeah.
Understood. Any further comments or questions? We'll move this on to second reading.
And finally, to streamline board policy and eliminate redundancy, policy 6959 is proposed for deletion, release, and retainage on completed construction projects. Because a separate policy is not needed, the superintendent proposes deleting this policy and moving the language to procedure 6950P, public works contractor assurances and change orders. I didn't hear what you.
Director Nichols fully supports that.
A reduction, yes. Any further questions or comments? We'll move this on to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to section 15.0, which is our upcoming agenda items. Dr. Salzman, would you like to present
Yes.
what's upcoming?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Board directions to the public this evening. At the March 29th special meeting, the board members will attend the Audit Entrance Conference. We have a work study session on April 18, 2023. Study session, the board will participate in the Strategic Progress Monitoring Session number 4. Special meeting April 20th, 2023. The board will attend the WASDA District 1 Regional Meeting. 15.04, the regular meeting on April 25th, 2023. At that meeting, the board agenda will contain the following. Several policies for second reading. Board goals for 22-23 progress review. The February financial report. Northwest Regional Learning Agreement. Snohomish Discovery Program Agreement. And the Detention Center Educational Program Interlocal Agreement and Surplus Technology. And before I turn it over back to you, Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I just have one point of privilege?
Yes.
I want to do this at the end of the meeting. I just want to honor Captain and President of the Board, Pamela Saint, Saturday night, the winner of the Jack Curtis Veterans Leadership Memorial Award for Leadership to Veterans. We salute you. Thank you.
So much. I appreciate that. Whew. Do with that. You didn't tell me you were going to do
No,
that.
I want to do it at the end too.
Okay, we'll move to section 16.0, which is executive closed session. There is no executive closed session planned for this meeting. We'll now move to section 17.0, and I think that is adjournment, and I think it is in order. We are now adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your work. Appreciate it.